Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook Library, a sanctuary of stories where fan fictions come alive, where ancient legends echo from the East and Western worlds awaken with wonder. Settle in. Your journey begins now.
Twilight. Shifting Moon Chapter 21. Too far. Edythe paused for the first time since the Spanish fever nearly killed her and the vampire venom turned her. Edythe felt heat from another person. It radiated off the man in front of her in waves. How dare he speak to me like this? I am only trying to save your sister, and this is how you treat me. Looking at me with those glorious blue eyes filled with anger yet again. Her mind was a mess of thoughts. As Thomas moved toward her, all Edythe could think was, "Don't come near me, I don't want to hurt you." She was relieved when he stormed past her in righteous anger. She wanted to reach out with her mind to see what she had done wrong and why he reacted this way. But every time she or Edward tried, it was like their minds were going through the vampire venom yet again. The pain was unbearable. She moved to the wall and leaned against it, taking deep breaths as if she needed them. How was he invulnerable to both her gifts? Neither she nor Edward could read Thomas's mind, and the compulsion she just tried to lay on him didn't work for even a second. This was unheard of in all her time alive. She didn't know how to make this better. Her power always saved her in the past, no one could deny her. Even the strongest vampire in their coven would be compelled for a day or two depending on what she compelled him to do. The coven will be pissed when they learn of this. Edward. Did I go too far? I was only trying to help. What will he say? Edythe couldn't calm her mind, but she moved her body towards the lunchroom. She skipped the food line and walked straight to the table where Emmett was shaking snow from his hair and Edward was sneaking glances at Bella through that bitch Jessica's mind. When she sat down, Alice turned towards her. "I lost sight of you again. Did you go and talk with Thomas finally instead of following him around like a stalker?" Edythe reached for her sister's hand. "Alice. I messed up. Badly, I think." Hearing her tone, Edward looked over at his sister and read her thoughts. His jaw dropped, and anger was shown in his eyes. "What do you think you were doing, Edythe?" His tone was too low for humans to hear, but the force in his voice left no doubt that he was upset with his sister. It took the rest of the table by surprise, as they had never seen Edward and Edythe truly fight before. Edythe turned to her brother with desperation in her eyes. "I was only trying to help, Edward, I swear it. I don't want to see you go through this pain you are inflicting on yourself." Edward stood up as the bell rang. "And how did that work out for you?" He walked out of the cafeteria trying to decide if he should still go to class or if his sister's actions made that impossible now. "Everyone else go to class, nothing will happen today. Edward will be okay. I will take Edythe home and we can talk later. Yes, it is firming up. I see us all there in my visions." Alice's eyes came back into focus, and everyone stood up and left. Jasper kissed Alice as he walked by. "See you, Hummingbird." Edythe allowed Alice to lead her out of the cafeteria and into the woods. Seeing that Edythe was still not able to focus, Alice took her in her arms and ran for home as only vampires could do. If anyone saw the 4 feet 10 inches Alice carrying the nearly 6 feet Edythe like a princess, they would no doubt wonder what kind of dream they had just walked into. Luckily no one saw them, and they were soon home and sitting on the couch. "Now, tell me what happened, Edythe," Alice demanded. After Edythe explained, Alice just looked at her. "Oh, you spoiled child, Edythe. Your compulsion works on the mind, and it may have never failed at compelling a human to do what you want before. But neither has anyone managed to block you out of their mind until Bella and Thomas. You didn't even think of this, you just wanted your way with no effort as usual. If it were possible, Edythe would be in tears by now. Her family warned her that she used her compulsion too often. But when it came to her compelling people to forget their suspicion of the Cullen family, they never said anything. Why is this so different than when I use my power to help the coven? I didn't do this out of spite, I wanted to help my brother." Alice looked her in the eye. "Do you not realize that since you started using your compulsion so much that all your interactions outside the family go exactly the way you want them to, or you change it to do so? You used to like arguing and bargaining with humans when you had the chance. But now you just compel them to think the way you want them to think. Like you are above them." Alice stood up and finished by saying, "No one can fix this for you, Edythe, this you will have to do on your own. before waking up to her room to look at the picture Thomas drew of her. I really hope this doesn't affect our friendship, Thomas. I am as frustrated as Edythe with you blocking my power somehow. Thomas' Pav being in the presence of Edythe was just increasing my anger. The surprised look in her eyes when I spoke back to her was like the look on a child's face who had never been told no before. I had to get out of this hallway, and the fastest way out was to go past Edythe. Not stopping to look at her again, I rushed past her, refusing to stop as I hit the door to the courtyard. This wasn't far enough, so I raced into the woods to find a place to let the last grip of control I had over my anger go. The trees passed in a blur, and I barely registered it, my feet moving on their own. My pace fell to a run instead of a sprint. Running at this pace, I felt I could go forever and have enough to sprint every once in a while. My head started to clear, and I started to enjoy moving through the snow-covered forest. It was peaceful and helped my anger return to the small white flame. I started to ponder the girl that made me so angry. Was it her words or was it the way she said them that made me lose it? If I looked at her words, then she was trying to tell me that Edward was dangerous for Bella, and she didn't want him to know she had warned me. But the way she said it made my back go ramrod straight. The tone of expectation that I would just accept her words with no reservations and more importantly no explanation for the one saying such things. It could also be taken as Bella wasn't good enough in her eyes to be with her brother, and I needed to explain that to her. No way in hell was that true in my opinion. Bella was a great girl, and any boy would be lucky if she liked them. Besides, if Edward didn't like her, then he should be the one saying that, not Edythe. And I am sure as hell not going to get in the middle of it. I came to a stop near a creek and knelt for a drink. It was ice cold and very refreshing. Getting another handful of water, I splashed my face just because I wanted to. Suddenly I heard a scream come from farther down the creek. I raced towards it without a thought. It sounded like it came from the other side of the stream, so when there was a shallow spot I half jumped, and half ran through the water. As I got closer to where I thought I heard the scream, I heard another one that was full of pain and fear. I also recognized rage surrounding all the other feelings. As I broke through a tree line, I saw a girl about my age with her face lifted to the sky and her clenched hands thrust behind her. Her chest rose and fell in quick gasps as she was breathing in after letting loose with another scream of pain and loss. She must not have heard me due to her own screams, and I stood there just watching her. She had on a pair of blue jeans and wore a red top leaving her shoulders bare. Her black hair was long and tied in two braided ponytails. The braid was loose, and many hairs had escaped the rubber bands. Chapter 22. Edythe, are you okay? I asked softly, trying not to startle the girl. She had a round face, with a little childhood chubbiness still there in her cheeks. The side I could see from my vantage point had tear stains falling down them. Pick at my words, the girl jumped a little, but she had no fear in her dark eyes as she turned to look at me. She didn't try and wipe her face free of her tears or shrink away from me. She looked at me challengingly. What are you doing on my people's land? I am sorry. I was running through the woods and heard a scream. I just wanted to make sure no one was hurt or in danger. Go back to your side of the river, paleface. Learn to mind your own business as well. The girl said as she turned her back to me and walked into the trees nearest to her. My first thought was of anger at how she treated my concern for her, but then I remembered the rage in her scream and let it go. I shrugged my shoulders and then returned the way I came, looking for another shallow spot to cross the water. Walking back through the trees toward town, I pulled out my phone and saw that there was no way I would make it back to school for class. I sent a text to Bella telling her not to wait for me and do her own thing after school. I was trying to think of what to tell Charlie when he heard I skipped classes today. This naturally led my mind back to why I had left school, and my irritation grew again as I heard her words ringing in my head. Forget I told you this. In Edythe's velvety voice. Then a point I hadn't focused on before came to the forefront. The dismissal in her eyes when she finished speaking, not waiting for, or even expecting a reply to her words, threatened to enrage me yet again. This thought startled me a bit. I knew her words made me mad, but that didn't warrant me taking her words to heart. I could have told her to shove it and go on with my day. But looking back, all I could see was the insult on every level, and the impact I allowed it to have on me. Why did this bother me so? I had dealt with many spoiled princess types in my last school who thought I should worship them because of who their daddy was. Or because every other boy treated them that way. But I had never let it get to me before. What was different this time? In a deep part of my mind, I came to the realization that I couldn't recall the details of what any of the previous princess girls looked like, but I could recall every detail of what Edythe looked like. Both times I had seen her. I brushed that thought off with the justification that I had more recently seen Edythe than any of those other girls. She would fade with time as well. I just let my mind wander as I picked my way through the forest for the next hour, and then surprisingly, I came across the rock slab I had used yesterday to meditate on. I managed to beat Bella home by about 5 minutes. She seemed distracted when she walked into the kitchen. "You okay, sis?" She shook her head. "Yeah, just a guy in biology. We talked a lot, but he didn't really say anything." "What about you?" "The coach asked why you didn't go to gym today and told me to try and talk you into joining some sports teams." Again. I smiled at her. "Yeah. Sorry. Something spiked my temper, so I had to get out of there to cool off." "Nothing to worry about. Sorry if I troubled you. I am going to run over to the station and tell Charlie about me skipping before he gets a call from the school, and I'll do my workout as well." "Okay. I think I'll make enchiladas for dinner. I bet Charlie hasn't had much of that style of food, at least I haven't seen a Mexican restaurant in town." "That sounds good. What do you think of the chances he is willing to try sushi? I could really use a good tuna roll." Bella laughed. "I tried to get him to go to a sushi restaurant when he came to Phoenix before you moved in. It didn't go well. He thought they were bringing us bait to go catch a fish to be cooked." "Ha ha. That would have been great to see, but I bet he was just being snarky about the food." "Okay, I'm going to head out for my workout. I will see you for dinner. Quick question though, what was the guy's name in biology?" Bella blushed. "You keep your nose out of it. Don't let me catch you asking around at school about it either, or it's salad dinners for a week." I quickly left the kitchen. With all the running I had done today, I decided to just go work out at the station. Once I got there, I saw Charlie was in his office going over some paperwork, so I went and knocked on his door jamb. "Hey Charlie, just a heads up, but I ditched classes after lunch. My temper got the best of me after a girl said some stuff. I am not sure why it got to me so much today. I will try harder to keep my cool next time. I did get the call about you ditching class. Don't make a habit of it, kid." "Thanks, Uncle Charlie." The rest of the night was calm and mundane. Though I think Charlie has a taste for Mexican cuisine now. Edythe sat on the couch where Alice had left her and lost herself in thought. Since she had woken from the pain of the transformation into this new life, she had been able to read the minds of those around her. Her brother could do the same, but he had a much wider distance that his mind could reach. Neither were aware of it until Carlyle pointed out that we were answering his thoughts as much as his vocal questions. It was a big adjustment to stop doing this. The other part was the name being spoken in thought, though I had it much easier as Edythe was one of those names that were cramming relatives' names together to arrive at. Luckily, it never became popular, but I felt bad for Edward in that department until his name fell out of use. Our first year was spent mostly apart from people though, until we could control the thirst actively. It didn't bother me that I wasn't as powerful as my brother mentally because I was able to learn to turn it off. For some reason, Edward's ability was always on, and he had to focus to tune people out. But I became the opposite. I had to reach out to hear, like I had an on-off switch. It wasn't until the late 1990s that I learned that I could convince people of things. Carlyle called it compulsion. The first time I had compelled someone was when a boy wouldn't stop asking me out on dates. I looked him in the eyes and told him, "I want you to forget about me." From that day forward he had no recollection of me. His friends just figured that he got tired of asking me out and chose to ignore my existence from then on. But reading his mind, I could tell he really couldn't remember me at all. It made life so easy. All I had to do was make eye contact and tell someone what I wanted them to do. It worked great when people became suspicious of us. I would just tell them to ignore their suspicions. It made us all safer. No human had ever resisted my compulsion before now. Even the vampires I had used it on could only shake it off after some time. Jasper had once asked me to compel away his craving for human blood, but that didn't last too long. I suspected that if it was against someone's nature, then the compulsion was weak. I couldn't bring myself to try anything too mind-altering on a regular person. Was that it? Was the thought of Thomas interfering in Bella's life so against his nature that he couldn't be compelled? No, that doesn't sound right. We can't read his mind either, and my compulsion must be a mental thing. It was weird. Bella's mind was just silent, as if hidden beyond her or Edward's reach. But Thomas's mind was like it was protected by a flame. It burned anything that got near it. Jasper's emotion control worked on Thomas, but Carlyle said that was more of a chemical control than mind control. It was very difficult to work out the abilities of vampires. It was also assumed that the abilities increased over time. Not that any of this would help me work out what to do about the problem I created today. Esme came down from her office upstairs. I overheard your conversation with Alice, dear. Can I help in any way? Edythe looked at her mother of nearly 100 years. Hi Mom, could you maybe give me some advice? Chapter 23 Nightmares. Edythe looked at her mother of nearly 100 years. Hi Mom, could you maybe give me some advice? Anything, my baby girl. Esme sat down next to Edythe and embraced her. I don't want to see my brother hurting. I can feel his pain in every thought he has about this girl, and I hate her for it. She makes Edward second guess everything about himself, and many times he hates himself for the way he feels. But I also see that he can't get away from her either. I thought that by talking to her family, then maybe I could make her stop hurting Edward. Esme shook her head. Oh my dear love. Alice is right. You have gotten so used to having everything go your way that you have forgotten what it is like to work through a problem. Most things can't be solved with a simple sentence. Edward has to come to a decision about this girl on his own. None of us can do it for him. Alice has said that in some of her visions, Bella becomes part of our family. Would you take away the happiness that would bring to Edward? Then should I take it out of Edward's hands and just turn her now, so he suffers less? No, that may hurt Edward more than anything. You know what he feels about making someone like us. It should only be a last resort, not used to take away someone's future. This one he will have to work out. I am just excited to see someone that can make him feel so much. He has been alone for so long. Just like you, my dear. Would you want someone to interfere in your matters to that extent? Edythe shook her head. Then what should I do, Mom? Esme reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Edythe's ear. We can only support Edward and be here when he needs us. Now tell me about this Thomas. You have focused on him quite a lot these last few days. Edythe quickly said. He is not my singer. He smells very nice, but I have remembered the way Bella smells to Edward, and it's not that for me and Thomas. She thought for a moment. His eyes are a glorious blue, and strangely his hair is white. He has a very chiseled face, with no fat on it at all. He is nearly as big as Emmett, but the way he walks reminds me of Edward. He moves almost slow to the eye, but he is always prepared to move quickly if needed. His balance is always evenly distributed. His clothes are baggy, like he wants to hide his physique. But he must work hard at it to reach his size at his age. He just needs someone to pick his clothes for him. He hums to himself under his breath when he works on a math problem that challenges him. As Edythe was lost in her description of Thomas, Esme smiled more and more as Edythe continued, but she quickly hid her smile before it could be seen by her clueless daughter. She tried to straighten her face lest her daughter try and read her mind. As Edythe finished her description of Thomas, Esme grabbed her hand. You will have to explain everything you just told me about how you feel to Edward, and accept that this is not about you in any way. Only Edward and this girl can work this out, no matter how we feel. Now, I need to go talk to Alice for a bit and take her to look at a meadow for another house build. Emmett and Rosalie will marry again soon, and I want it to be perfect. Edythe didn't say anything to Esme as she started to work out the best way to tell Edward her feelings for him and this girl Bella. Naturally, Alice saw her and her mother running to a meadow with her powers, but was confused as to why. Esme managed to wave off any questions Alice would ask until they were far enough that Edythe couldn't read their minds or hear them. Esme took both of Alice's hands and jumped up and down in excitement. I have never seen Edythe so feminine before. Tell me everything about this boy Thomas. You see it too. He doesn't show up in my visions, so I can't be sure, but she is so falling head over heels for him. Best of all, she doesn't know anything. Jazz and I are trying very hard to not leak it until she is too far gone to pull back, but it's so hard. Even Jasper can feel it. Ho, I am so happy I don't know how I'm going to keep it to myself. As Esme and Alice were trying to get their excitement out of their system so they could control their thoughts around Edythe in case she tried to read their mind, the rest of the family arrived home. Edythe went directly to Edward and just opened her thoughts for him to read, showing all her doubts and wishes. He was so caught up in looking at the thoughts about himself and Bella that he didn't recognize the sharpness of the memories about Thomas. After a few moments, he reached out and hugged his sister. Mom is right, sis. I must work this out with Bella. My pain is not her fault, she knows nothing about it. I also think you need to set some boundaries on your new powers, something along the lines of only in emergencies and only for the sake of others. Controlling the way people think is a dangerous thing. I will try, Edythe responded. The rest of the day and night were normal for the Cullen family. Carlisle and Edward went to feed so Edward could stand to be around Bella and then worked on their project for clone blood. Alice and Rosalie worked on a fashion brand that was exclusively for Rosalie until after she wore the outfit. Then it was sent to their designers for mass distribution. Emmett was still working on a metal compound he thought would look like glass but be as hard as steel. Jasper was working on his latest book about the Civil War and its effect on westward expansion. Edythe decided to look over some legal paperwork that was from the parent company they had started back in the 40s. The Cullens were silent owners, they allowed proxies to run the company with their supervision. This was much easier now with Edythe's new powers. Combine all this with Alice's future sight power and they were one of the unseen powers of the world. Thomas Thomas was hiding behind a stall in the middle of the hallway. His mother and her boyfriend Johnny were with him. There were screams and loud noises all around them. Johnny grabbed my mother's arm. Nancy, the next time a crowd runs our way we have to run with them, trying to keep them between us and the gunman. The fear in his voice was evident even to the young Thomas. My mother looked at him. I don't know if Thomas will be able to keep up though. Johnny looked at her. Don't worry my love, I will keep him close to me, I am strong enough to pull him along. If he wasn't so fat, I would just carry him. My mother looked at him in anger. Don't call him fat Johnny, I have told you I don't like it. She reached down and took her high heels off too. Run better. Sorry love, the situation has me freaking out. Don't worry I will bring him along. Moments later he looked over and started waving his hand at a group closer to the gunman than us. Come on. Let's make a run for it, they are facing the other way. The group started moving our way and Johnny grabbed my arm painfully. As soon as the group of 20 got close Johnny shouted, "Go!" and started to push my mother in front of him while dragging me behind him. Loud bangs reached Thomas's ears and people started to run faster. Johnny looked behind us, seeing the crowd start to pass him. He finally shook his head. Sorry fat ass, I told you to lose weight. He then let my arm go and tripped me, causing the crowd to stumble over my body and slow down. The kicks and stomps were painful, I felt bones breaking. My ribs burned, and I couldn't catch my breath. Thomas, wake up. I was pulled from my dream by Bella calling my name. I sat up quickly. I'm okay, Mom, don't leave me. I reached out and grabbed the arm in front of me. Please don't leave me. Bella winced in pain as Thomas grabbed her arm in desperation. Thomas, wake up, it's Bella. It's okay, I'm here. You're okay, you're safe now. It's all a bad dream. She reached out with her free hand to comfort him, wiping the sweat from his forehead and caressing his face. I'm here brother, it's okay. Charlie's door opened and he appeared while trying to tie his robe. Is everything okay? I heard shouting. Chapter 24 Fighting Jasper. I woke from my nightmare to see Bella half sitting on my bed and I could feel her caressing my cheek. Her voice was low and calming, trying to soothe me as I woke up. Over her shoulder, I could see Charlie with a worried expression. Both sets of identical brown eyes were fixed on me in concern as my mind started to clear. My short, panicked breath started to smooth out and I started taking deeper ones. After 10 or so breaths I realized that my forearm was straining, and I looked down to see Bella's arm in my grip. Her hand was nearly blue from lack of blood flow due to my grip cutting off circulation. I quickly let go and watched as her face tried not to show the pain that hit her due to blood rushing back into her hand. I looked down in shame at my weakness. I am so sorry I hurt you, Bella. I know, Thomas. It's not your fault. I will be fine. Using the heel of my hand, I hit my temple. These damn dreams need to get out of my head. Every word was punctuated with a new blow to my head. Charlie stepped forward and grabbed my hands. Careful, kid, don't hurt yourself. You went through an unimaginable ordeal. It is no wonder you have bound up feelings over it. It may very well take the rest of your life to work it out, just never stop working at it. It's okay, I am awake now. I looked at my phone, 2:20 a.m. You guys really should go back to sleep. I think I will draw for a while. I didn't know if they truly wanted to go back to bed or if they just wanted to give me space, but they both left, and Bella closed my door. Before she did though, she whispered a soft, "I love you." I spent about an hour drawing random pictures before I felt tired enough to close my eyes. I don't think I ever went fully to sleep again, but just closed my eyes and zoned out until my alarm went off and I got up to start my morning workout. Not really caring what clothes I gathered, I just shoved a few things in my bag and zipped it up, then headed downstairs. To my surprise, I saw Charlie sitting at the table drinking his coffee. Feeling shame burn the back of my neck. I really am sorry, Charlie, that hasn't happened in a long time. You have to know that I would never hurt Bella intentionally. Charlie looked at me. Who? Oh, I understand. No, I know you would never intentionally hurt her, Thomas. I guess I just feel a little useless. I am trying to rack my brain on ways to help you. But I keep coming up empty. You said it right in my room, Charlie. I will have to work my way through it. I started my eggs as we both fell into a companionable silence. After I was done eating, well, I better get moving. Don't want to keep Jasper waiting. See you at the station. Charlie nods at me as I walk out the door. I walked down the steps of the porch and went to Charlie's cruiser, which was unlocked as usual. This alone shows the difference between Forks and Phoenix. You can't even leave your car unlocked long enough to run into the gas station and back without fear of your car missing in Phoenix. Well, if in you don't look like the wrong side of right this morning. Came the southern drawl of Jasper. If that's your fancy way of saying that I look like shit, then you have a powerful way of understating things, my friend. I yawned and knuckled my eyes. I wish this place had a decent gym. I need a heavy bag to hit. Jasper had a thoughtful look on his face. If you want to skip the run, how about we do a little sparring? I won't stay still like a heavy bag, but you can throw some punches. I don't think I want to take the chance of hurting my only male friend in town, especially if doing so will also hurt my only female friend in town. Thanks for the offer though. Jasper got a wry smile on his face. Oh, I don't think that's anything to worry about. Come on, I know a clearing nearby that will be perfect. Getting there should be a warm-up in itself. I followed Jasper as he ran off at a faster speed than normal. He must be excited at the idea of a sparring. He has a lot more spring in his step than normal. I was a little winded by the time we came to a clearing that looked big enough. I noticed that Jasper wasn't even panting from the run. I never realized he had so much stamina before. As my suspicion began to rise, Jasper looked over at me and suddenly, I didn't care. I felt my body settle down, and for the first time today my muscles started to relax. I started to stretch my arms out. This must really be what I need if I am able to feel so much better so quickly. Normally after a night like I had, it takes days to feel normal again. I started to look around at the clearing and was happy to see there were no rocks or tree limbs on the ground to cause issues. I kicked at the ground and found it was cold but not frozen solid. It will be a little rougher than landing on a mat, but not too bad. Good thing you know to check the ground. You will be spending a lot of time on it. Jasper taunts me. I look up to see him circling me at a distance, trying to get a feel for my balance and awareness. Well, like I said, I can't go hurting both of my friends at the same time. I crouched down and put both my legs slightly farther apart than normal, giving myself a solid base to work from. After a few moments of his circling, I grew impatient and started to move towards him on my own. But as soon as I started my charge, he started his, so I drew up short and steadied myself to accept his charge. However, just like me, Jasper pulled back and started to circle me again. This same thing happened 2 more times before I realized that he was doing it on purpose. His speed gave him the ability to react quickly enough to my charge that it looked like we were in sync. This time, when I started my charge, I did so with no intent to stop. With my strength, I just needed to get a hold of him, and it would be over. Jasper just moved to the side out of my reach and tripped me to the ground. You telegraphed that one with your eyes. You should have kept the surprised look in them when I started. Forward. I picked myself up off the ground and noticed he was within arm's reach, so I shot a jab at him. He moved his head just enough that my fist was close enough to graze his ear. Nice. You didn't waste the opportunity to strike, but you kept it slow so you could stop it if I didn't react. I didn't say anything, just got into a stance I liked, and proceeded to throw punches when I saw the opportunity. Jasper was true to his word about me not being able to hit him. Mostly he dodged my blows, but occasionally he used his hands to redirect my fists to miss him. I tried keeping my pace slow, so I didn't get winded, but Jasper kept tricking me with fake openings. I was frustrated, but surprisingly I wasn't getting angry. I tried to alternate my pace with a few quick blows, then resting for a bit by just throwing occasional jabs to keep him aware of me. I tried to shorten my jab length to trick his depth perception at a crucial time. After about 15 minutes of this, fatigue started to set in, and my posture got sloppy. Jasper reached out and gave me a shot to the ribs that surprised me completely. Keep those elbows tucked to protect the ribs, don't be afraid to move the body for protection. Don't just use the body to strengthen a punch, learn what part can take damage and keep going and what is debilitating if damaged. To prove his point, Jasper started to strike me with open palms when he had an opening. After another 10 minutes, Jasper stepped back. Okay, let's rest a few minutes, you're starting to sound like a rusty bellows in a bad blacksmith shop. I sat down on a nearby tree that had fallen years ago so I could catch my breath. Once I did, I stared at Jasper. Where did you learn so much about fighting, man? You're only a year or so older than me. He smiled at me with a bit of a scary look in his eyes. It's the miles more than the years, my friend. Besides, this isn't fighting, this is just sport. True fights don't last this long. The movies have people convinced that it is only a good fight if both people are standing and slugging it out with each other. That they can take damage and just shrug it off, then come back later and win it all. It's only recently that people are starting to realize that in a no-hold-barred match, nearly every time the match goes past the first few punches, it goes down to the ground for wrestling and judo. Media and false expectations along with sports, have brought about some damn stupid fighting styles. I smiled at him, this being one of the few times I saw him serious. So, what style do you focus on? Jeet Kune Do, with your speed it should fit nicely. Ah, the 1-inch punch. That is a great style, but I subscribe to a different way of thinking. A specific style passed down to a group, should only be a foundation. Your own likes and dislikes, strengths and weaknesses should help you form your own style past that. A person's instinct mixed into a comfortable style of their own making is a frightening thing. He smiled at me, but there is no better style than one you perfect in battle. Get up. Time for round 2. Chapter 25. Not again. That was the first time I learned what being trounced was. With all my strength and speed cut out from under me, I was frustrated like I hadn't been since I decided to never to be helpless again. Jasper didn't humiliate me. He was a terrific teacher and talked like he had tens of years of experience, which was weird as he was just a bit older than me. But for an hour and a half, he bounced me all over that clearing, slapping my ribs and a few times my forehead to the point I was sure I would have handprint-style bruises. I took everything he said to heart and knew I would think over his words many times over the next few days. We ran to the police station once the sparring was over, and we both flew through the workout like it was nothing. My body kept acting like I needed more weight, but logically I knew adding more could hurt my overall progress. If I didn't know better, I would think someone was slipping me steroids or something. When Jasper went to leave, I finally took notice of how icy the streets were. Worried, I suggested Jasper not ride his bike home but let me and Bella take him to school. He could have someone bring him a change of clothes. He just laughed good-naturedly at me and said he would be fine. When I went back to the workout room to clean it up, Charlie poked his head in. You look like you feel a whole lot better. You had me a little worried this morning. Yeah, Jasper and I did some sparring instead of running this morning. I think I needed my butt kicked around for a while to work my way through everything. He may not look like it, but even with his build being smaller than mine, he would stomp me flat with little effort. Charlie looked at me and nodded his head. Yeah, when I met them all, the Cullens that is. He was the one I was most cautious of. His eyes have a look like I have only ever seen in old war vets. He must have had a rough time before Carlyle adopted him. Trying to protect a sister like he has, I am sure there was no shortage of fights. I gave him a wicked smile. So my perpetually single uncle does know how to appreciate a good-looking girl. I was beginning to wonder. Don't you even start rumors like that, boy. That girl is nearly the same age as my own daughter. Besides, beauty like that comes with more trouble than I want in my life. I nodded in agreement. Yeah, that one is definitely high maintenance. I am just happy my uncle is still taking note of the flowers in the Garden of Forks is all I'm saying. Charlie blushed. Well, stop talking and get ready for school. Bella should be getting here soon. In this ice, I may be better off taking a bobsled to school. No worries, I put her tire chains on her truck before I left for work this morning. You should have said something, I could have helped. I should probably learn to put them on at some point also. Charlie nodded. If you plan to stay here or anywhere in the north, it's a good thing to learn. I will have you help next time. I headed for the shower room and did my normal routine. Then went to wait for Bella at the door. Once she got there, I walked with short, slow steps until I grabbed the door of the big red monster and then I climbed in. Bella had my favorite peanut butter pancakes in the same Tupperware as last time, ready and waiting for me. You didn't have to do this, sis. I should be the one making you special foods and such. I feel terrible for hurting you. Let me see your arm. Naturally, she was wearing a jacket, and I would bet long sleeves under that, for warmth if nothing else. Her arms stayed covered to hide them from my guilty eyes. Stop worrying about it, Thomas. Besides, I'm driving right now and can't show you. We talked about normal stuff as she drove to school and parked in her usual spot. This truck handles really good. I thought it would be so much worse than it was on the icy streets. You should look at your tires then and remember to thank your dad. I jumped out to look at the chains on her tires to see if they would shed some light on how they work. I was on one side of the bed and Bella was looking at the tires on the other side when I heard the sound of something heavy sliding. I looked up to see an old minivan sliding towards us and a panicked kid in the driver's seat. He was sliding so fast that there was no way he could stop before hitting Bella's truck. Right where she was standing. As fast as I could, I moved towards her by pulling myself into the truck bed and praying I could reach any part of her to yank out of harm's way. I reached my arm out, knowing I wasn't going to be fast enough. Not again. My mind screamed. I kept trying to move faster and just before the van struck her, Bella disappeared. My momentum carried me to the side where Bella had been, and I looked down to see her on the ground covered by a guy with short bronze hair. Before I could relax though, I saw the van bounce off the fender of the truck and start to slide again with its momentum swinging the van front around, and I realized that it would squish both Bella and the one who saved her. No way I was going to let that happen. I put my foot on the rail of the truck bed and shoved forward in hopes that the van was off-center enough that my shoulder tackle high would stop some of its momentum. If not, then my bigger body being squished to death between the vehicles should mean that the two of them would survive. When my shoulder hit the van, I felt a snap somewhere around my shoulder collarbone area, but I kept pushing with my legs against Bella's truck, thinking that any little bit was that much more of a chance for their survival. By some miracle, the van started tipping away from the truck and the two next to it. The guy who saved Bella had his hand out toward the van, probably a reflex action to stop the inevitable. After that glance, I couldn't see them any longer as I was tumbling with the van onto its side. The surroundings erupted into loud noises. It was like I had my earphones on before, but suddenly I could hear screaming and shouting. I felt someone touching me asking something, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. I recognized the long bronze hair and my mind flashed to the boy covering Bella. The guy and Bella. Are they okay? I shifted my legs to help me slide off the van so I could check on Bella. But I must be weaker than I thought. This little girl who didn't weigh more than 130 pounds was stopping me, holding me in place. With tears in my eyes, "You have to let me go so I can see. I won't let another one die." I tried so hard. Help me. I begged her. She helped me slide off the side of the van and I threw my unhurt arm over her shoulders. She then helped me walk around the van to see the guy the first recognized as Edward holding Bella down and checking her head to see if she was hurt. They are okay. After seeing this, the strength went out of my legs and Edythe, who I had recognized earlier, helped me to sit beside the truck. My left shoulder and arm dangling out of my control. As I got comfortable, I heard Bella and Edward arguing. I need to check on him. He looks hurt. Let me up. Edward had his hand on her shoulder. You most likely have a concussion. You shouldn't be trying to move around too much right now. He isn't in any danger. You can see him. I saw her continue to struggle with him. It's okay, Bells, you should listen to him. If you get any more hurt because of me, I will feel even worse. If that's possible. Edythe, who was still next to me, because of you. What are you talking about? You did more than most would think humanly possible to save your sister. You have nothing to feel bad about. If I hadn't told her to look at her tires, she would have never been in the way to begin with. So yes, it is my fault. Anything after that is a moot point. That's stupid, Thomas. You didn't make the van slide towards me, Bella said from where Edward was keeping her. I could hear the ambulance sirens in the distance. Everything I did was useless if you hadn't gotten her out of the way first, Edward. For that, you will forever have my gratitude. I looked directly at Edward as I spoke. I am just glad I started walking over as soon as I saw you guys get out of the truck. I couldn't remember what the homework assignment was in biology and planned to ask Bella here. If it wasn't for that, then I never would have been able to get to her in time. Then you saved us both by hitting the van just perfectly to tip it over. We are all very lucky. It sounded like he was getting the story straight in his head more than anything, but then, I am still a bit loopy, so what do I know? Chapter 26. I am fine. Teachers and students were everywhere around us. The gym teacher lowered himself into the van to check up on Tyler. I now recognized him from the memory I had of the panicked driver. I also remembered all the times I saw him driving like an idiot to get attention. My money was on him trying to ice drift into the parking lot trying to look cool. I turned my thoughts away from that idiot and turned my attention to the girl standing protectively over me. I was a bit surprised at her actions, as the last time I saw her, I left her standing dazed and confused in the hallway after an argument. She truly was beautiful. I didn't want to take my eyes off her. Once the ambulance got there, I was approached by the first guy out, but I told him to tend to my sister first. When the second guy came up to look at me, I didn't get to say anything before Edythe spoke to him. Hey Brad. This guy threw a shoulder block into an oncoming van and was nearly squished between the van and truck. His left shoulder and arm seemed to be unresponsive, and he may have a head injury. He has been saying some pretty stupid stuff since the accident. I heard Bella giggle at Edythe's explanation of my situation. I looked over as they were putting a neck brace on her. Laugh it up, gurney girl, at least I will be walking to the ambulance. Not so fast. Brad said, there is a chance you hurt your back, so you get the gurney treatment too. I was crushed. What a humiliation. Right about that time, there was a different sounding siren approaching, and once it stopped, I heard Charlie's panicked voice. Bella, Thomas, over here, Dad. I heard Bella shout. I am fine. Edward and Thomas stopped me from getting hurt, but you should check on Thomas. Why that little traitor, sending a panicked parental figure over here? There will be retribution. It's fine, Charlie. They are just being overprotective because we are your kids. No reason to panic. Will someone tell me what the hell happened without starting the conversation with how fine they are? The school principal hurried over to Charlie and started to provide him with witness accounts of everything that happened. After telling the principal to get some eyewitnesses to write everything down and take it to the station, Charlie escorted the ambulance to the hospital, and we were wheeled into the ER to begin an exhaustive round of tests and x-rays. Pav Carlisle, my supernatural hearing, picked up the police cruiser escorting an ambulance in to be quickly followed by another ambulance. What could have happened when both ambulances of Forks were sent to the same place and returned with sirens on? Before I could get up to investigate, I heard two sets of footsteps headed for my door. My first children. Despite them both coming to me in such a situation, I still couldn't help but smile at the thought of them. Though for the briefest of moments I feared that Edward had succumbed to his nature. But then I quickly dismissed such thoughts. Looking up at the door as it opened. What can I help you with? Edward started. There was an accident. Bella was standing in the worst possible spot and her brother wasn't going to get to her in time. So, I ran to save her. I really ran, Carlyle. No one saw and everyone is rationalizing the situation. Well, except Bella. She knew I wasn't close enough to get to her. But she is accepting my version of events, for now. After a moment to let that sink in, he continued. Thomas was trying to protect us and was using his body as a sacrifice, first in trying to stop the van and second as a bumper between the van and the truck to provide me and Bella a chance to survive if he failed. In his desperation, his thoughts shouted out and I could hear them without reaching into his mind. I used his flashy action to stop and flip the van away from us. No one is suspicious at this point. At least, no one I can hear. I am sorry, Carlyle, I put us all at risk. If we have to move on because of actions taken to save a life, then it is no fault of yours, Edward, and well worth it. Both men were surprised when Edythe hugged her brother fiercely. Thank you for saving that idiot brother. He is too impulsive and self-sacrificing for his own good. Edward smiled. I can think of no one better suited to have my sister's interest. Edythe backed up and put her hands up. It's not like that, stupid. I just don't want to see him hurt. Both men could see the vampire equivalent of a blush on her cheeks. Well, regardless, it appears I have some patients to look after. Carlyle stood up and walked out to the ER. Behind him he heard Edythe hit Edward on the shoulder. Don't say stuff like that, it's embarrassing. Looks like I need to pay extra attention to this Thomas boy, Carlyle told himself. As soon as he entered the ER, a nurse came to him with a frown. Dr. Carlyle, I think we got a bad batch of thermometers. The boy, Thomas, keeps coming back with a temp of 103.4, but he doesn't present with any symptoms of a fever that high. Carlyle thinks quickly about the hot temperature of the local Quileute tribe. It is possible he has some form of jewelry that is throwing the thermometer off. Don't worry, I will look after him. His quick excuse is enough to quiet any suspicion of the nurse. He lets his staff run their tests as he isn't needed for the everyday operational stuff. Edythe approaches him just as Thomas is wheeled out of the X-ray room. Moments later the film is out and Carlyle puts it in the light frame to see better. I see his shoulder is out of the socket and it looks like his collarbone was broken a week or two ago. That's not possible. He lifts weights every day and spent all morning wrestling Jasper. Besides, I heard bone break when he hit that van. Well, Edythe, my dear. The collarbone is one of the fastest to heal in the human body at 36 weeks, but it's been barely an hour since the accident. Very interesting. I will have to pop his arm back into the socket and he will make a full recovery. He decided to keep his theory to himself for now. Edward appears as soon as the film for Bella does and all three look it over. Good job, my son. Very little damage. Well, new damage anyway. Look at all those healed contusions. How many times has this poor girl fallen or been dropped on her head as a child? The final film showed up and Carlyle found a broken arm and a solid concussion, so Tyler would be an overnight patient. Well, let's go spread the news and set an arm back in its socket. Give me a minute to prepare her. As soon as she sees us, Bella will start adding things together. Well, I am going to see Thomas, so you do what you want, Ed. Edythe walks past her father and brother going straight into the room. Both men smile and shake their heads. As Edythe entered, she heard Thomas talking, so she stopped to listen. Now you know the possible consequences of driving like an idiot. That crap belongs on the track or in the movies, not in the school parking lot to try and impress girls. You could have killed Bella and Edward. Tyler was just sitting in silence, letting Thomas have at him. He knew he deserved it and more. He shuddered at the thought of killing someone. Bella was lying down with her eyes closed to avoid the conversation. Edythe smirked at the neck brace that was stuffed under the bed's nightstand. Edward walked in and Tyler started talking to him, but Edythe tuned them out and walked to Thomas. How are you feeling, Thomas? This was the first time she had spoken his name to address him. It gave her a faint tingle in her belly. I am good, Edythe, other than I'm in a hospital. I never cared for these places. A quick flash of memory from when she was in the sick ward in the early 1900s, and she nodded her head in understanding. His speaking her name also made that tingle in her stomach bigger. My dad should be in here any second to explain everything. He says you will make a full recovery. She knew she wasn't supposed to say that, but it made her feel good to do so. As soon as she finished talking, the door opened again and in walked one of the most attractive men I had ever seen. Most noticeable was his skin tone, which, like all the Cullens I have seen so far, was marble white. He was 6 feet 2 inches with a medium build. Collar-length blonde hair and one of those faces that you would believe was 20 if they said so or 35 if that's what they said. His eyes were incredibly gentle-looking and their color was a golden brown. "Your family's skincare regime has to be very expensive," I told Edythe. She gave a wry smile. "You wouldn't believe what it costs, Thomas." Chapter 27 Drive. Cullen Edythe's dad first stopped to talk to Bella and Edward. After which, those two left the room. I could tell by the set of Bella's jaw that she was going to show Edward her stubborn side, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Better if he learns about it early. Next was Tyler, where I heard him say, "You, young man, will be staying with us the night. Your left arm is broken and in need of setting as well as a cast. You also have a concussion that we will have to keep an eye on. Your mother is on her way, so just sit tight. Finally, we have the young man who potentially saved my son. I cannot express my gratitude enough for what you were willing to do. I have heard the accounts of your actions, and all I can say is that my family owes you a debt. If you are ever in need of anything, please don't hesitate to let us know. Please drive." Cullen, you can't speak to me of debts without bringing up your son saving my sister. We are even, with me still owing a lot to your family if we are keeping score. Doctor. Cullen smiled. "Please call me Carlyle. Now I will need to set your arm back into its socket. It will be painful if you resist its movement, so try and relax as much as you can." Doctor. Cullen took Thomas's left hand in his right and his left hand grabbed Thomas's elbow. "Now deep breath and relax, then I will count to 3 and move it back into place. Ready?" I nodded my head and took a deep breath and let it out to totally relax my body. I knew I had to stay loose, so I didn't breathe in another breath. Doctor. Cullen looked me in the eye. "I will start counting now. 3. He gave my arm an expert shove and twist and my shoulder popped, and then felt better instantly. Then the swelling started to set in, and I rotated it a bit to get a feel for it. "Thanks, Doc. It feels much better. Nice trick, by the way. You are free to head home, Thomas. Just take some Motrin for the swelling. If you feel anything off, don't hesitate to come back." Doctor. Cullen looked at Edythe. "Do you want to go see if Charlie and Bella are still here? I want to make sure and tell them what to watch for with Thomas and make sure she told Chief Swan about her light concussion." "Thanks." As Edythe left the room, Carlyle turned on a monitor beside the bed so no one could hear what he was asking besides Thomas. "Do you by chance have any relation to the Quileute tribe, Thomas?" Thomas thought for a moment. "I remember my mother telling me a story about my great-grandmother on my father's side being an Indian princess, but she never said the word Quileute to me. I think her name was Elaraim Black before she married an Easterner after being banished from her tribe. Thanks for answering me, and if you will take my recommendation. No working out, not even running for a minimum of 3 days. Then go easy, and if you feel any pain, stop doing what you are doing and give it more time to heal before trying it again." Just after that, I saw Edythe lead Charlie into the room. The first to catch his eye was Tyler. "You can kiss your license goodbye for a good long time, son." He then turned to Dr. Cullen and practically bowed to him for taking care of his kids. I didn't hear much more after that because Edythe came to talk to me. She reached out for my shoulder before thinking better of it and dropping her hand. "How are you feeling, Thomas?" The way she said my name made my belly turn over and brought a smile to my face. "Well, I am glad your dad didn't make me cry in front of you. I don't think my pride could take the blow. Bad enough you saw me loaded on a gurney by 2 men complaining about having to lift me into an ambulance." She laughed at that, and Thomas was lost in her smile and the sound of her laughter. "Do me a favor and let Jasper know that your dad has banned me from working out until the weekend. Would you?" Before she could answer, Charlie came over. "You ready to head home, sport? I need to get you and Bella settled and get back to work." "Sure. Nothing like a good excuse to skip school. We should probably get someone to drive Bella's truck to the house, so we have a ride to school tomorrow." Edythe quickly spoke up. "I can do that if you get me the keys. I can drop it off and Edward can follow to take me home." "That is awfully nice of you, Edythe. I will get the keys for you. But don't bring it back until after school. Don't use it as an excuse to miss more school than is necessary. Sure thing, Chief Swan, Edythe answered. We both followed Charlie out of the room, but as we passed Tyler I whispered, I'll get him to back off on taking your license. But you need to be better behind the wheel. At the time, I had no idea that Edythe planned to make sure Tyler would never break a traffic law again unless it was an emergency. As Charlie drove us home, he warned us. When you get home, the first thing you need to do is call Renee. Bella panicked, imagining the freakout her mother was having. You told her. Charlie just looked at her like, duh, I had to. It's a parent thing. I stepped in politely. No worries, I'll call her first thing. Bella gave me an appreciative look and said nothing more. She seemed angry at something or someone. Once we got there, Charlie waited until we were both inside before leaving to go back to work. I went directly to the phone and dialed Renee's cell. When she picked up, she was even more excitable than I expected. Hey Aunt Renee, I am fine. Bella has loads to tell you though. Remember to ask about Edward. I then handed the phone over to Bella as she had a betrayed look on her face. That's for sending Charlie after me at the school. Then I went to my room to lie down and relax a bit, leaving Bella to calm down her mother. Pav Carlisle. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had only used once before. At that time, it was to let the heir of Ephraim Black know that we were going to be near their territory once again and confirm the existence of the treaty. The fear in his voice caused me some pain, but I understood it was better to be weary of my kind than open themselves up to a potential slaughter again. After 4 rings it was picked up. Black residence. An aged but happy voice answered. Carlisle hated the discomfort that he was bringing to this man with his voice alone. Hello, Chief Black. This is Carlisle Cullen. He heard the deep intake of breath as his words registered to the man on the other side of the phone. I came across something I thought I should report to you and the tribe, in consideration of the treaty. There was a young man brought to the today who healed a collarbone break in an hour and whose temperature was almost 104 when he checked out. His name is Thomas Raizel, and he is the nephew of Police Chief Swan. When I asked about any connection to the Quileute tribe, he mentioned a family story with the name Ephraim Black. He said he was told she was his great-grandmother. I understand your reluctance to interact with me, but I thought this important enough that you would want to hear about it. Did you say he is the nephew of Charlie Swan? Came a tense reply. I did. The young man in question came along with Mr. Swan's daughter when she returned to town. So, the boy has only been in Forks for less than 2 weeks and he is already. Thank you for this information. The phone went dead after that. Carlisle sighed at the abrupt ending of the call. Now he had to decide what to tell his own family, especially Edythe. He knew he had to meet the rest of his family at home to keep control of the conversation today's events would cause. Chapter 28 Council meeting. As soon as the phone rang, Billy hurried to answer it. He was in the kitchen fixing up some leftovers for lunch. Pushing his wheelchair, he made it just as the 4th ring started. Black residence. When he heard the too perfect voice for only the 2nd time in his life, he drew in a sharp breath. After the Cullen Coven sire finished speaking, Billy asked a couple of questions to make sure of some details and then he hung up with no thought of social niceties. Sitting back into the chair that his diabetes had confined him to, he thought for a while and made a plan. He first called his friend Harry Clearwater, then Sam Yulee, and the oldest of the elders, Quileute III. Telling them all the same thing. Meeting at the tribal hall ASAP. Rolling his wheelchair out of the house, his hunger forgotten. He wheeled himself to the main road, not even sparing a glance at the truck in the driveway because of the difficulty getting in and out for such a short distance. He didn't take his usual joy as he coasted downhill, at times much faster than was considered safe in his wheelchair. The only one to beat him to the hall was the new shifter Sam Yulee. By tribal standards he should be the next chief, however, Sam has refused it until Jacob makes his transition and can voice his opinion. So, for now, Billy kept that title as empty as it was for a non-shifter. We need to look at the records from back in Ephraim's time. I am looking for the name Ephraim, and any information on her. Quill is the oldest of us, but he can't be expected to remember everything. How are you coping, Sam? The anger is getting more under control every day, but it is still a constant struggle. Leah is asking questions, but I keep evading them. How will I know if she is the one I have imprinted on? The legends are vague on that part. For all I know, I already have, and I am just hurting her needlessly by not telling her what's going on with me. Her cousin Emily is coming to town in a few weeks, so hopefully that will help her. She is angry a lot lately, and I can't blame her. Sam spoke respectfully to a man he looked up to as a father figure to pattern himself after. His own father ran away from the pressure of being a husband and father, so was obviously not a good role model. As they finished speaking, Harry Clearwater and Edythe came through the doors. When everyone was together, Billy went over his phone call with Carlisle Cullen. I do remember something about a squaw being exiled in those times, but not the specifics, Quill said. Harry looked up. That's a very offensive term there, Quill. I meant it that way. I remember something about her being part of a scandal. My father wouldn't even speak her name. The group waited as Sam brought out all the written history from the back room that had survived from those times. Some missionaries taught a few members of the tribe to read and write. The elders of the time let many of their histories be written down but banned anything of the powers they harbored in their blood. After an hour of searching, Harry called out, "I have something here." The others gathered around Harry to hear what he had found. Very interesting. Listen to this. Chief Ephraim Black was considered one of the greatest chiefs in the tribe's lore, but his legacy was marred by his sister Elaraim, born moments before him. Whoever wrote this didn't use proper spelling, only sounding words out, so it may be a bit inaccurate. But it says that she somehow brought dishonor to the tribesmen of the time. It is all very vague. I had no clue your grandfather had a twin sister, Billy. Harry looked over at his friend. I didn't know either. My father never spoke of her. What could she have done to be banished, being the chief's older sister? Let's see. There is a bit more here, but it's hard to make out. Harry stood and went to the window for more light. Ephraim's shame came from refusing to acknowledge the banishment, so it had to be carried out by the Council of Elders. It was a subject of anger whenever brought up. That is the end of the page. The men sat together lost in thought. The silence is broken by Sam, so it is possible that this Thomas is related to the tribe. Old Quill sounded a sharp rebuke. No, if he is related to the banished one, then he is nothing to the tribe. Sam looked over, but Elder, if he has the potential to be a wolf warrior, can we not accept him back into the tribe? If what the Cold One says is true, then he is closer to shifting than even Jared. Once one is banished, then that line is cut, root and stem. The council banished her for a reason, and anything to do with her line has nothing to do with the tribe. That is a law from the first days. Old Quill said stubbornly. He may not have anything to do with the tribe, but he is blood. As a man, I will never let happen to another what happened to me. To awaken alone, with no clue what is going on, thinking you have gone mad. No one can imagine the despair of that. None but me. Sam stood up and stormed angrily out of the hall. Billy sighed at the stance Sam had taken. Hey Harry, how about you send me some of your fish fry? I just remembered there is a hockey game on tomorrow night and my TV is about to go on the fritz. I think I will have Jacob run me to Charlie's house to watch it. He quickly wheeled out of the hall and shouted, Hey Sam, how about you help push me up to my house? Don't leave a poor old cripple to work that hard on an empty stomach. Harry looked around the hall. Great Quill, now we have to put all this back ourselves. Pav Edythe raged at the lack of speed of this big red monster she was driving. Running her thoughts through ways of improving the truck to something impressive by today's standards. She wasn't even half done by the time she pulled the truck into the driveway of the Swan house. Maybe I can bring up the project to Rosalie, she loves working on vehicles. After jumping out, I walked to the door and knocked. I heard Bella on the phone. Mom, we are fine. I have been telling you for hours that there is nothing to worry about. Look, I need to go, someone is at the door. She then hung up the phone and started moving to the door. But in what I am coming to understand is normal for the girl, she hit the sofa with her foot and nearly fell to the ground. After a minute, she rights herself and I hear her walk the rest of the way to the door and ask, Who is it? It's Edythe. Bella, I am here to drop off your truck. Bella opens the door quickly. Oh my God, I am so grateful you brought it back, I really didn't want to walk tomorrow. She took the key I was offering. Do you want to come in, Edythe? I can wake Thomas up for you. No thanks, My family is waiting for me. We have a family meeting planned for today. Bella pokes her head out and sees Edward in his car, then quickly pulls her head back in the doorway. Thanks again, Edythe. I will see you at school tomorrow. See you then, Bella. I wave as I turn and walk to the car waiting for me. Once I climbed in, Edward hit the gas and we were out of town within minutes. Edythe can instantly tell that Rosalie is furious at Edward for potentially exposing us. But she doesn't see the big deal. Alice has her searching the visions, face on, and from the look of Edward, he is reading just as much as Alice is seeing. As we pulled down our drive, Edward parked next to Carlisle's Mercedes. Good thing he is here, Edythe thought. This silence was going to explode once they got to the table. Everyone went straight to the dining room. The room was, of course, never used for its intended purpose. But it was furnished with a long oval, mahogany table surrounded by chairs. We were scrupulous about having all the correct props in place. Carlisle liked to use it as a conference room. In a group with such strong and differing personalities, sometimes it was necessary to discuss things in a calm, seated manner. I had a feeling that the setting was not going to help much today. Carlisle sat in his usual seat at the eastern head of the table. Esme was beside him. He held hands on top of the table. Esme's eyes were on Edward, their golden depths full of concern. Her mind was full of only one thought. Stay. Keep the family together. I had my mind open and was doing just as much reading as Edward was, though I could only read one person at a time. I needed to know where this was going. Chapter 29. Cullen meeting. Edward sat on Carlisle's right, and I sat next to Edward. As everyone else sat, I could see the lines forming. Rosalie sat directly opposite Carlisle, at the other end of the long table. Emmett sitting next to her, his eyes and thoughts wry. He would never go expressly against Rosalie, he would instead bargain and smooth talk his way with her when they were at odds. Rosalie glared at Edward, never looking away. Alice and Jasper came in last and sat beside Esme. Alice rubbed her forehead as if she were suffering from a headache. Jasper placed his hand on her shoulder in comfort as he looked on worriedly. Edward took a deep breath and started off, "I'm sorry." He looked first at Rose, then Jasper and Alice, then lastly at Emmett. "I didn't mean to put any of you at risk. It was thoughtless, and I take full responsibility for my actions." Rosalie looked at Edward hostilely. "What do you mean? Take full responsibility? Are you going to fix it?" When I saw what she meant by fixing it, I let out a hiss of rage and glared at Rosalie. Her thoughts of killing Thomas and Bella enraged me beyond belief. Edward put a calming hand on my shoulder, one strong enough to keep me in place. As Rosalie looked at me in surprise, unsure where my sudden hostility came from, he turned his eyes from me back to Rosalie. "Not in the way you mean," he said. I could tell he was struggling to keep his voice even. "I will leave now and stay away until they are gone." Esme reached over and grabbed Edward's hand. "No, stay, please. It will just be a few years." Edward comforted his mother. "Esme's right though," Emmett said. "You can't go anywhere right now. That would be the opposite of helpful. We must know what people are thinking more now than ever. Alice and Edythe can catch anything major coming." Edward disagreed. Carlisle shook his head. "I think Emmett is right, Edward. They will be more likely to talk if you disappear. It's all of us leave, or none of us." "I think you all are trying to ride in the carriage before hooking up the horse," Jasper said. Thomas's act, foolish as it was, most likely deflected any interest in how Edward arrived next to Miss Bella. All anyone at school talked about was him tackling a van to save his sister. Many stories didn't even have Edward in it. Edward lifted his hand and brushed it through his hair. "Jasper is right. Bella's brother Thomas proved an excellent distraction from my actions. Besides, I do not believe Bella will talk about what she saw me do anyway." "You don't know their minds," Carlisle pointed out. "I know this much. Alice, back me up." Alice stared up at me wearily. "I can't see what will happen if we just ignore this." She glanced at Rose. No, she couldn't see that future, not when Rosalie was so decided against ignoring the incident. Rosalie's palm smacked down on the table with a loud bang. "We can't allow the human a chance to say anything. Carlisle, you must see that. Even if we decided to all disappear, it's not safe to leave stories behind us. We live so differently from the rest of our kind. You know there are those who would love an excuse to point fingers. We have to be more careful than anyone else. We've left rumors behind us before. Just rumors and suspicions, Edward. Not eyewitnesses and evidence. Evidence. I scoffed. Rosalie, I looked the other way in Rochester because I felt that you were owed your justice. The men you killed had wronged you monstrously. This is not the same situation. The Swan girl is innocent, and Thomas was willing to sacrifice himself to save your brother. Carlyle said. It's not personal, Carlyle, Rosalie said through her teeth. It's to protect us all. There was a moment of silence while Carlyle thought through his answer. When he nodded, Rosalie's eyes lit up. She should have known better. Even if I hadn't been able to read his thoughts, I could have anticipated his next words. Carlyle never compromised. I know you mean well, Rosalie, but I'd like very much for our family to be worth protecting. The occasional accident or lapse in control is a regrettable part of who we are. It was very like him to include himself in the plural, though he had never had such a lapse himself. To murder blameless children in cold blood is another thing entirely. I believe the risk they present, whether speaking their suspicions or not, is nothing to the greater risk. If we make exceptions to protect ourselves, we risk something much more important. We risk losing the essence of who we are. Rosalie scowled. It's just being responsible. It's being callous, Carlyle corrected gently. Every life is precious. Rosalie sighed heavily and her lower lip pouted out. Emmett patted her shoulder. It'll be fine, Rose, he encouraged in a low voice. The question, Carlyle continued, is whether we should move on. No, Rosalie moaned. We just got settled. I don't want to start my sophomore year in high school again. You could keep your present age, of course, Carlyle said. And have to move again that much sooner. She countered. Carlyle shrugged. I like it here. There's so little sun, we get to be almost normal. Well, we certainly don't have to decide now. We can wait and see if it becomes necessary. Edward seems certain of the Swan girl's silence, and Thomas seems to follow her lead. Carlyle bargained. Rosalie snorted. But despite that, she had given in. Suddenly Alice gasped. Oh. Edward saw what was on her mind, and his mouth fell open with an audible gasp. I then looked into Alice's mind, and I was shocked, only vaguely aware that everyone besides Alice and Jasper was now eyeing me and Edward warily. It was clear as glass in her head. Alice, smiling, with her icy white arm around the girl's warm, fragile waist. And Bella was smiling, too, her arm around Alice's cold shoulders. The vision was rock solid, only the timing of it was unsure. But, Alice, Edward gasped. I couldn't manage to turn my head to see his expression. I couldn't tear myself away from the image in Alice's head in order to hear his question. I'm going to love her someday, Alice said. I was still locked into Alice's thoughts. Where was Thomas in this vision? Ah, Alice sighed. Their decision to let Bella live had cleared a new future. See, Bella's not going to say anything. There's nothing to worry about with her. The way she said the girl's name, like they were already close confidants. Alice, Edward choked. What does this? I told you there was a change coming. I don't know everything, Edward. But she locked her jaw, and I could see that there was more. Edward apparently saw the same. She was trying not to think about it. She was focusing very hard on Jasper suddenly. She did this sometimes when she was trying to keep something from us. What, Alice? What are you hiding? Edward asked. No, demanded. I heard Emmett grumble. He always got frustrated when Alice and Edward had these kinds of conversations. She shook her head, trying to not let us in. Is it about the girl? I demanded. Is it about Bella? Or is it about Thomas? She had her teeth gritted in concentration, but when I spoke Bella's name, she slipped. Her slip only lasted the tiniest portion of a second, but that was long enough. No, Edward shouted. I heard his chair hit the floor, and only then realized he was on his feet. Edward. Carlyle was on his feet, too, his arm on his shoulder. Edward seemed barely aware of him. It's solidifying, Alice whispered. Every minute you're more decided. There are only two ways left for her. It's one or the other, Edward. Edward could see what she saw, but he could not accept it. No, Edward saw it again. There was no volume to his denial. He braced himself against the table. Will somebody please let the rest of us in on the mystery? Emmett complained. I have to leave, Edward whispered to Alice, ignoring him. Edward, we've already been over that, Emmett said loudly. That's the best way to start the girl talking. Besides, if you take off, we won't know for sure if she's talking or not. Edythe can only read one mind at a time, you have to stay and deal with this. I don't see you going anywhere, Edward, Alice told me. I don't know if you can leave anymore. Think about it, she added silently. Think about leaving. I saw what she meant. Yes, the idea of never seeing the girl again was painful for Edward. But he saw it as necessary. He couldn't sanction either future he had apparently condemned her to. I love her, too. Or I will. It's not the same, but I want her around for that. Love her, too, he whispered, incredulous. She sighed. You are so blind, Edward. Can't you see where you're headed? Can't you see where? You already are. It's more inevitable than the sun rising in the east. See what I see. Edward shook his head, a horrified look on his face. No. He tried to shut out the visions she revealed to both him and I. I don't have to follow that course. I'll leave. I will change the future. You can try, she said, her voice skeptical. Oh, come on, Emmett bellowed. Pay attention, Rose hissed at him. Alice sees him falling for a human. How classically Edward. She made a gagging sound. I scarcely heard her. What would this future bring to Thomas? What? Emmett said, startled. Then his booming laugh echoed through the room. Is that what's been going on? He laughed again. Tough break, Edward. Fall for a human. Esme repeated in a stunned voice. For the girl he saved today. Fall in love with her. Now all my children have someone. What did she mean by that? Wasn't I one of her children, because I'm not in love with anyone? What do you see, Alice? Exactly, Jasper asked softly. She turned toward him. I continued to stare numbly at the side of her face. It all depends on whether he is strong enough or not. Either he'll kill her himself. She turned to meet Edward's gaze again. He was glaring at her. As if she made the visions possible. Which would really irritate me, Edward, not to mention what it would do to you and Thomas. She faced Jasper again, or she'll be one of us someday. Someone gasped. I didn't look to see who. That's not going to happen. Edward was shouting again. Either one. Alice didn't seem to hear him. It all depends, she repeated. He may be just strong enough not to kill her, but it will be close. It will take an amazing amount of control, she mused. More even than Carlyle has. He may be just strong enough. The only thing he's not strong enough to do is stay away from her. That's a lost cause. I couldn't find my voice. No one else seemed to be able to either. The room was still. I stared at Alice, and everyone else stared at Edward. After a long moment, Carlyle sighed. Well, this complicates things. I'll say, Emmett agreed. His voice was still close to laughter. Trust Emmett to find the joke in the destruction of Edward's life. I suppose the plans remain the same, though, Carlyle said thoughtfully. We'll stay, and watch. Obviously, no one will hurt the girl or her brother. I stiffened. No. Edward's voice was not a shout or a growl or a cry of despair, but some combination of the three. No. Edward's mind was in a panic. He wanted to leave, to be away from the noise of their thoughts, Rosalie's self-righteous disgust, Emmett's humor, Carlyle's never-ending patience. Worse. Alice's confidence. Jasper's confidence in that confidence. Worst of all, Esme's joy. Edward stalked out of the room. Esme touched his arm as he passed, but he didn't acknowledge the gesture. He was running before he was out of the house. Clearing the river in one bound and racing off into the forest. Edward pawed the rain was back again, falling so heavily that I was drenched in a few moments. I liked the thick sheet of water. It made a wall between me and the rest of the world. It closed me in, let me be alone. I ran due east, over and through the mountains without breaking my straight course, until I could see the lights of Seattle on the other side of the Sound Mountains. Stopping before I touched the borders of human civilization. Shut in by the rain, all alone, I finally made myself look at what I had done. At the way I had mutilated the future of that poor girl. First, the vision of Alice and the girl with their arms around each other, the trust and friendship was so obvious, it shouted from the image. Bella's wide chocolate eyes were not bewildered in this vision, but still full of secrets. In this moment, they seemed to be happy secrets. She did not flinch away from Alice's cold arm. What did it mean? How much did she know? In that frozen moment from the future, what did she think of me? Then the other image, so much the same, yet now colored by horror. Alice and Bella, their arms still wrapped around each other in trusting friendship. But now there was no difference between those arms, both were white, smooth as marble, hard as steel. Bella's wide eyes were no longer chocolate. The irises were a shocking, vivid crimson. The secrets in them were unfathomable, acceptance or desolation. It was impossible to tell. Her face was cold and immortal. He shuddered. He could not suppress the questions these visions brought, similar, but different. What did it mean? How had this come about? And what did she think of me now? Edward felt he could answer that last one. If he forced her into this empty half-life through his weakness and selfishness, surely Bella would hate him. But there was one more horrifying image, worse than any image I had ever held inside my head. My own eyes, deep crimson with human blood, the eyes of the monster. Bella's broken body in my arms, ashy white, drained, lifeless. It was so concrete, so clear. I couldn't stand to see this. Could not bear it. I tried to banish it from my mind, tried to see something else, anything else. I tried to see again the expression on her living face that had obstructed my view of the last 2 weeks of my existence. All to no avail. Alice's bleak vision filled my head, and I writhed internally with the agony it caused. Meanwhile, the monster inside me was overflowing with glee, jubilant at the likelihood of his success. It sickened me. Chapter 30 Internet Investigation Edythe Cullen. After Edward stormed from the house out into the wall of rain coming down, I turned to Alice. What about Thomas? Can you see how he is affected by all this? Alice looked uncomfortable. You know I can't see him in my visions, Edythe. I don't understand why I can't. The only thing keeping her semicalm was the happy look on Bella's face in the 2 visions Alice had seen, not knowing that she hadn't been fast enough to see a third vision. She wouldn't look like that if something happened to Thomas, right? Timing was impossible to see in the visions. Edythe knew this. She also knew that outside events could change the visions in unexpected ways. Edythe was getting more and more upset with Thomas. First he blocked her from reading his thoughts and made it painful to even try. Now he won't provide her with any comfort through Alice's visions. She was tempted to run to his house and demand he explain why he was doing this to her. There has to be something we can do, Alice. I don't want him to suffer because of us. We can't take his sister away from him. There was something in my voice I didn't recognize. Alice walked to Edythe and hugged her after hearing the panic in her voice. We will work it out, sis. Maybe I can see his shadow if I look at those around him. The idea getting firmer in Alice's mind. Maybe I can see him through the actions around him. Like in a photo where someone has been removed. You still see the people adjust for his presence, even if you can't see him. Alice felt a major headache coming on. In probably the most classic female move since the invention of the internet, Edythe said, I am going to look him up online. Maybe I can find something there. Later that night she called out for Alice to come to the computer. I think I have found something. A few years ago, there was a mass shooting in a Denver mall. Apparently, it was a group of 4 individuals that went into the mall with multiple weapons and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. They went on a killing spree that ended with over 100 dead and many more wounded. A manifesto that each gunman had on them cited racial injustice as the cause for their actions. Alice looking over Edythe's shoulder, I remember hearing about that. It was just before we left Alaska. How does this connect to Thomas though? I came across the name Nancy Raizel as a victim in the shooting. The story goes on to say her son survived, but due to his age, they didn't name him. I then found work records for a Nancy Raizel in one of our affiliated offices out of Denver. The records showed her life insurance policy beneficiary was one Thomas Raizel. His relation is her son. She was a financial lawyer for a company Jasper set up under the Cullen umbrella. One of the real up-and-comers according to the personnel file they have on her. She was being groomed for a top position once she proved herself a bit more. Esme joined the 2 girls at the computer. What about his father? Is there anything there? Surprised at her interest, Edythe shook her head. I haven't found anything yet. Wait, here it is. The company did a personal background investigation during the hiring process. Says her husband died in an animal attack of some sort while she was still pregnant. Esme raised her hand to her mouth. That poor boy. What happened after his mother was taken? Edythe goes back in her search. Right after that happens, he starts to mirror Bella in Arizona, so I assume he went to live with his mother's sister there, Bella's mom. It also shows a few court dates in his time before coming here. The little I can tell, he was a victim of bullying, and once it got so far, he reacted violently to the bully. To the point, the judges of the cases were of the opinion that he overreacted. Jasper spoke out from the other side of the room. He does have an inordinate amount of rage in him. He hides it well, but I can feel it when I am around him. A few times I have actively suppressed it, like our first meeting. Edythe started to get suspicious at this point. Why all the concern over Thomas? I don't think I have ever seen so many in our family focus on one person so much. Jasper just chuckled and shook his head, holding back the thought of amping up the emotion Edythe was feeling the most at the moment. Alice just looked at him with a smile in her eyes. You bad boy. Apparently, she saw a vision where he acted on his impulse. Esme smiled. I am only focused on him because you are, my dear child. She started to stroke Edythe's long hair. Would you like me to do your hair special for school tomorrow? Edythe looked at her mother suspiciously. Scene shift. Thomas woke the next morning at his usual time. Even though he wasn't going to work out, he didn't want to get his timing messed up. It would have been nice if he and Alice had drawn the first subject for their art project. He grabbed his phone, but he put it back down after realizing that he only had Ben's number and he was most likely asleep right now. He decided to knock out the essay for government that wasn't due for a couple of weeks. It was a boring but fulfilling thing to do until an hour later when he decided to go downstairs. He started to pull out the ingredients for making French toast and bacon, not forgetting to start Charlie's coffee. French toast was one of his favorites to make because you could get everything set and only cook when someone was ready to eat. Charlie got up around 6 a.m. as was his normal now that he was getting used to having us in the house. I started his first piece of egg-covered bread as he poured his coffee. By the time he walked back inside after going to get the newspaper and started to read, I finished putting the powdered sugar on his first piece and flipped his second one. The smell of bacon cooking filled the kitchen. And I slipped Charlie his plate. 2 pieces of French toast and 4 pieces of bacon. I had already placed the syrup on the table. Charlie looked the plate over. Nice to see you can do more in the kitchen than eat. Looks good. Yep. No fear of me being like you and eating out for every meal while single. I chuckled. His offended look was interrupted by the flavor of breakfast hitting him just right. He made no more comments and just smiled as he ate. Shortly after, Bella came stumbling into the kitchen in her ratty sweats and bed hair. I didn't expect you for another hour. Why so early today? You know why, you traitor. It's a good thing you made your special breakfast, or you would be eating dry oatmeal today. Making me deal with Mom. I tried to tell her you were hurt worse than me, but that just backfired on me. She sat down at the table pouting still. I started her breakfast and held up a slice of bacon for Bella to see. She held up 2 fingers and I doubled the size of her breakfasts. She must be hungry this morning. Before I forget, I have a friend Billy Black coming over tonight to watch a hockey game. He will most likely bring his son with him. Bella, I'm not sure if you remember his son Jacob, but you played together some as kids. Bella just gave him a questioning look to indicate her lack of memory. Anyway, to save you from having to cook, we will get a couple of pizzas delivered. If you have a preference for something other than all meat and supreme, speak now or pick topping off your slice. I'm good with that selection, but I doubt you're thinking that a couple will be enough. I gave him a thumbs up. This glutton is a family and a half all by himself when it comes to pizza, Dad. Bella points at me with her fork. I am going to have to sneak in a raise at the next town budget meeting the way you eat, boy. I just smiled at him and cooked up the last of the bacon and French toast. Before heading to the bathroom so I could be out of Bella's way when she wanted it. Chapter 31. Classes. After the accident, since Bella didn't have to pick me up from the station, we left the house a little later than normal. Once we got to the school parking lot, Bella avoided the usual parking spot out of reflex and went in a bit deeper than normal. I wisely kept my mouth shut. It seemed as if everybody in the parking lot turned their heads at the sound of the big red truck. Bella and I both groaned out loud. Neither of us was good with so much attention. I reached into my backpack and pulled out my headphones. They hadn't gotten too much use since coming to Forks, but I still kept them with me and fully charged. When I stepped out of the truck, someone started clapping and suddenly everyone else joined in. I blushed and put my headphones on. Bella just looked down and started for the lockers. I quickly followed her, trying not to acknowledge the cheers. I prayed this passed quickly. Once I grabbed the books I would need for the first half of the day, I waved at Bella and made a beeline for art class. My headphones provided the best excuse for not reacting to people trying to get my attention. Once I got to my classroom, I opened the door, and the first thing I saw was Alice in her seat. After hanging up my coat, I realized I was the last person to class, but at least the bell hadn't rung yet. As soon as I sat down, Alice gave me a brilliant smile. "Thank you for saving my brother. I know you are going to hate the attention from it all, but things could have gone very wrong if you hadn't reacted. Like I told your dad, if Edward hadn't gotten Bella out of the way, I wouldn't have been able to save anyone," I said in all sincerity. When the bell for class rang, Ms. Ross stood and started class. Once she finished speaking, she turned the class over to the book for a set of review questions. "Thomas, Alice, would you two come to my desk, please?" When we approached, Ms. Ross started explaining, "I was planning to speak to you both yesterday, but considering how things went, I am just happy to have you both in class today. Now, on to business. I have thought over your request to each paint the same person, but I believe that is rather limiting with both your social circles. She let this sink in a bit. How about instead you each draw 3 events that are chosen randomly by me and you both do your own interpretation of the subject. For example, if I were to draw the subject of a baseball game, then you could both paint your interpretation of the game. Say Alice could draw a scene from the Women's League in the 60s and Thomas could paint a Sandlot game from memory. Once again, those are just examples. What are your thoughts?" I could see her points about drawing people. My subjects would be Charlie and Bella, and I have never seen Alice interact much with anyone outside her own family. I looked at Alice with a raised eyebrow. She looked at me and nodded. "It seems like your passion has convinced us both, Ms. Ross. We will do it your way. But I am curious if we would turn them into you before starting the next one, or hold them all till the end." I think turning them in before starting the next sounds like the best option. If you both see the others painting, it may help motivate you both and your competitiveness may just bring out a masterpiece. Can we do a drawing today? I have some free time on my hands due to yesterday's accident. If my beautiful partner agrees, that is. If you use the word beautiful in relation to a woman, you will always be partially right in what you're saying. This time you are completely correct though. Okay kids, we have about 15 minutes of class left. So, I want you both to give me 10 words or ideas that could be used in a scenario. Then I will fold them and mix them and choose. Alice paused once Ms. Ross finished speaking Thomas and I returned to our desk and pulled out some paper. She didn't say we couldn't come up with the ideas together, that way there are no doubles. What do you say? Pretty and smart. No wonder all the girls start gnawing on their livers the moment you enter the room, Thomas said with a smile. Save that silver tongue for Edythe, you smooth talker. Watching the blush creep up his neck was adorable and mouthwatering. Control yourself, girl, Alice told herself. After coming up with their ideas, they cut the paper into even slips and took them to Ms. Ross's desk. She looked them over and smiled. There are some great ideas in here that are open to wonderful interpretation. I am very much looking forward to your paintings. She folded them into little squares and using both hands she mixed them up until it was impossible to remember where any individual word was. Alice was at a bit of a loss. She was not used to being clueless about what was coming up. The change was both an irritation and a source of anticipation. Finally, Ms. Ross stopped mixing up the papers and drew one. She was definitely teasing them by opening it so slowly. Alice resisted the urge to grab the paper so she could be the first to see. Ms. Ross looked at the word and smiled. She then placed it on the desk for both of us to see. The word chosen was music. That one leaves so much to interpretation. I can't wait to see what you come up with. By my math, if you turn in one painting every 40 days, it will be perfect for the final turn-in. As she finished speaking, the bell rang for the end of class. Thomas and I gathered up our things and headed for the door. Thomas opened the door for me to reveal Jasper standing there. Naturally, I was overjoyed at seeing him and I couldn't resist jumping into his arms. I knew he wasn't much for public displays of affection, but I just can't help myself sometimes. Well, most times. Whatever. Thomas paused after Jasper hugged Alice and set her gently on the ground. He turned to me and nodded. I was glad he didn't say thanks for yesterday, and I didn't have to reply. Just a simple nod of acknowledgement and move on from there. I walked to Alice's class with them and parted at our usual spot. Walking into government class, one saw Mike panting over Bella like he was afraid she would disappear, and her giving just enough attention to him to not be rude in her book. I just wish he would take the hint or force her to say what she really thought of his empty and insincere flattery. Her description of Mike as a Labrador-style dog was exactly as I saw him. He would chase something until he caught it, show it off to the other dogs, and then get bored and look for something else to chase. Going back to chew on his first catch again every once in a while and then head back out for something new. I felt bad for anyone he was with, at least until he grew up. If he ever did. He looked at me as I approached and put his fist out. I heard you laid out a great tackle yesterday. Too bad you weren't here for football tryouts. I could use someone to block for me as I throw the winning touchdown. If you would like, maybe I could talk the coach into letting you on the team. He made sure to watch Bella's face so he would see the gratitude on her face for helping out her brother. Using the book in my hand to bump his fist. No thanks, Mike. I am not much for sports. I lose my temper and people get hurt. I will stick to being the quiet guy in the bleachers. You will never get a girl sitting in the bleachers, man. The type of girl I want won't care where I sit. Looks like the teacher is here. Talk to you later. His voice was especially grating this morning and I felt my temper fray a bit. It didn't help that the class was as boring as normal. After class, I said my goodbyes to Bella and planned to meet up with her at lunch. Biology wasn't bad once I got past the talk of yesterday's accident. Ben came and talked to me to make sure I was okay and then went back to his lab partner, a girl named Angela. She was part of the group me and Bella ate with, and I really enjoyed her company. She was what I would consider a good person all around. She always talked about her little brothers and was eager to help when asked. I also got a ton of amusement watching her and Ben interact. Both were into each other, but they were both too insecure to make the first move. I would have to see what I could do to fix that. Time for math. Chapter 32. A shift in thinking. I was strangely anticipating math class today. I knew it was my favorite subject, but the class itself was unimaginative and boring. It's no wonder people don't follow math as a career with teachers like this one. I was in such a hurry that I forgot to put my headphones on. I had underestimated how helpful they had been previously. I was instantly bombarded with questions about how I managed to stop the van. I simply replied that it was off balance from the first impact, and I just managed to nudge it enough to tip it over. Anyone could have done it if they hit it in the right spot. Thomas himself having no clue it was actually Edward who used Thomas's action as a diversion to flip the van from underneath. Finally making it to his classroom, he went directly to his desk, making eye contact with no one. He knew that eye contact invited conversation and questions. He quickly sat down and opened his book, but anyone watching would see that he looked toward the door every time it opened. He smelled the sweet scent before he saw her, and when she entered the room, he saw nothing but her. She wore a pair of white pants artfully cut open at the knees, and light gray shoes that looked a bit like Vans ironically. A light gray and white long-sleeve sweater that hung off one shoulder, and her hair was very artfully done. Her lovely bronze hair was parted down the middle and flowed straight until it went past her chin. Then it was an artful mess, curly in some areas and feathered in others. She let it fall partially over her shoulders, hiding any skin the sweater was revealing, but still showing patches of white as she moved. Thomas forgot to blink as Edythe approached him. Well, her desk, but he was next to it. He defended himself, against himself in his mind. While Thomas was justifying himself to himself, Edythe sat down and looked at Thomas, who looked like he was concentrating very hard on something. Good morning, Thomas. Thomas turned to look at Edythe, his gaze slightly unfocused. Me. Thomas. Thomas blushed and shook his head and gathered himself. Good morning, Edythe. You look exceptional today. Edythe looked closely at Thomas and noticed his pupils were dilated and his heart was beating very quickly. Almost as fast as when they argued in the hallway. When what he said registered in her mind, she couldn't help but smile at him. For some reason, His compliments meant much more than anyone else who told her the same thing today, even her family. She wanted to see his reaction to her outfit so much that it had been a battle to not show herself to him between his other classes. She now understood a little why Emmett and Jasper made so much effort to see Rose and Alice between classes. Edythe didn't know this, but at this very moment, a change had taken place in her mind and heart. At this very split second, her whole perspective changed just slightly but still very significantly. Something unseen and unknown had formed between herself and Thomas, a link that lay semidormant for now, but one that would affect their very existence for the remainder of their lives. Alice across campus in gym class with Edward. Alice was slightly frightened to see Edythe fade from many of the visions she had of the future. Her presence in some key visions was the only thing that kept her from grabbing Edward and running through the wall this instant to find Edythe and ensure she was okay. Once her panic had settled a bit, Alice remembered that Thomas and Edythe had the same class right now. She smiled at the thought that it was only the proximity of Thomas that clouded her visions. Looks like I will be seeing less of my sister for a while, Alice thought to herself. Focusing on her class, she saw that several of her classmates were looking at her wearily and making more distance than normal between them and her. Alice remembered that humans felt fear at her full-faced smile. She steadied herself and started looking over some more visions to learn if she could see Thomas by looking at those around him, specifically Edythe. Thomas and Edythe concentrating on math was just impossible today. The occasional glance that Edythe threw his way made sure he focused on her in case he missed one. He burned her into his memory. Every detail he could find by looking at her was another memory he wanted to never forget. He quickly reached into his bag, grabbed his sketch pad, and started to furiously draw the vision in front of him. If the teacher had looked his way, then there was no way he wouldn't be able to tell that Thomas wasn't doing math as fast as the pencil was moving. Edythe was lost a bit in thought about how Thomas's every action impacted what she thought and felt. Going back over some conversations and comments she overheard in the past, she suspected that others in her family saw this coming. When she thought about how suspicious she was when they started to pay so much attention to Thomas, and finally realized that their attention wasn't nearly as fixated on the boy as hers was. She stopped at that moment and looked at Thomas, who was writing something rather quickly. She thought about the word boy she used to describe him. He isn't even 18 years old yet, and here she was 104 years old. Talk about a cradle robber, she said to herself as she looked away from him. How will I tell him what I am? I will need permission from my family because it isn't just my secret that will be exposed. What will this do to Edward, who was embarking on his grand plan to ignore Bella starting today? Will my presence in Thomas's life make it more difficult for Edward? I have so much to figure out on my own. Then I will have to figure it out with Thomas. Oh my God, what if he doesn't want anything to do with me? Will he think I am a monster that feeds on blood? Is this what Edward has been going through this whole time? No wonder he has been such a grouch. Even with our brain, it's a lot to think about, and we can never stop thinking. Thomas was surprised to see that the smile that had been on Edythe's face turned into a frown that drew her eyebrows down. He turned the page of his book and started drawing again, but this time her face was worried, not happy. He wondered idly what had caused such a change, but he didn't want to interrupt her, so he kept drawing what he saw. He felt that he could draw her every action for the rest of his life and be happy. The bell rang, but Edythe was lost in her thoughts and didn't hear it. The same with Thomas, he was so focused. The rest of the class, gathering their stuff and standing, finally broke through to Edythe and Thomas. Thomas quickly put away his sketch pad and books. Mustering all his courage, he looked at Edythe, who still seemed worried about something. Would you mind if I walked you to the lockers? Edythe's frown went back to a smile in an unseen instant. I would like that, Thomas. This time, when Thomas was walking, people weren't staring because of the van incident but because of who he was walking with. No one had ever been so close to Edythe Cullen during leisure time here at school. They didn't dare stay close for reasons unknown to them. However, many had made the effort to get near Edythe, only to be politely ignored. They didn't talk at first, just slowly walked, enjoying the sensation of being next to one another. Who did your hair? It is very eye-catching. Edythe smiled. It was my mother. Every once in a while, she likes to spend some quality time with each of us kids. Usually doing something to open us to new experiences and grow, as she puts it. I don't usually care for my appearance beyond decency, but I find that being looked at the way you are looking at me right now is very nice. Thanks, Mom. I owe you for this one. You must thank your mother for me, she is very skilled. Any professional can turn someone plain into beautiful with clothing and makeup. But to turn someone like you who is naturally gorgeous into even more gorgeous is no easy task. We stopped at Edythe's locker first and then went to mine, as it was on the way to the lunchroom. I woke up early today and was bored not being able to work out. So, I reached for my phone to talk to someone and realized that I only had Jasper and Ben's phone numbers from here in Forks. Would you like to take my number or give me yours? So, I don't feel like such a loser, and maybe you could call me, or I can call you too. Taking a deep breath, I finally collected myself and made a more coherent request. I know I am rambling here, but I would like your phone number so that I can talk to you outside of school. Maybe we could even meet up and do stuff together. We had just reached my locker when I finally got to the point. After I shoved my books in, I looked over to see Edythe with her phone out looking at me expectantly. Chapter 33 Jealousy. I quickly rattled off my number and Edythe called it to make sure I had hers. I immediately added her to my contact list and took this opportunity to ask for a picture to add to her contact page. Finally, you do something smooth, stupid brain. I am asleep from 11 p.m. to 4:30 a.m., but you can feel free to wake me if you want to talk. I am going to shut up now, so I don't keep talking like a fool. You are fine, Thomas. I find it reassuring that you are stumbling over things the same as me. I have never felt this way with anyone, so I am nervous, but seeing you nervous as well as calming. You can call me any time of the day or night and I will answer if I am in cell range. You spend lots of time out of cell range. My family likes to go to the woods rather often and just about any time it's sunny we skip school to be together. Edythe was trying very hard not to lie to Thomas. She felt that a bald-faced lie would be disrespectful to Thomas. But a lie of omission didn't sit well either. I really need to get this settled soon, she told herself. Where I usually go isn't always out of range though, so you should be able to reach me most of the time. If not, just leave a message and I will call as soon as I get it. As we approached the lunchroom doors, I saw Bella and was looking forward to introducing her to Edythe. Hey Thomas, I am going to split off here and find my family. I really look forward to talking after school though, Edythe said. I couldn't react or say much before she was gone. I swallowed my disappointment as I walked to where Bella was waiting. Hey sis, ready for lunch? Was that Edythe you were just walking with? It was. Did you see how stunning she looked today? I did. I also saw the lost puppy look you had when she left you. What's up with that? Oh, you got jokes. Should I then bring up the permanent blush you have any time you are within sight of Edward? We both smiled at each other, agreed on a truce, and headed to the lunch line. When I noticed who was in front of us, I leaned down to whisper to Bella, you mind if I bring someone to our table today? Bella just shrugged, so I reached over her and tapped on Ben's shoulder. Yo, what's up man? Ben looked over his shoulder and saw it was me. Hey man, I heard you were walking around with Edythe Cullen. You are my hero man. That takes Batman-level courage. What? Talking to a girl isn't even as courageous as Superman being shot with a revolver. A girl can just tell you no, but the bullet could be kryptonite encased in lead. I joked with him using terms that would hit home. Ben smiled at my words. Well, us mere mortals who don't have the body shape of a god can lose all our self-confidence under a pretty girl's eyes. How about you sit with us today? It should even out the numbers so everyone has someone to talk to. Sure, I am good with that. Who all do you sit with? You will see, just a group of us, I told him offhandedly. After we all paid, I found a moment to lean down and whisper to Bella, Angela. She had a surprised and somewhat disbelieving look in her eyes, so I just winked at her and motioned towards the table. I saw that Angela was sitting at the edge of the group, so I angled myself around Ben to force him to sit next to her. Poor guy didn't realize who he was sitting next to until he was halfway sitting, and he just hovered there awkwardly. I patted his shoulder, forcing him all the way down in the seat. You're blocking my view of a pretty girl dummy, sit down. I winked at Angela, and she blushed. After that, I ruthlessly ignored Ben so he would be forced to talk to Angela or be rude to her. Halfway through lunch, Bella caught my eye and smiled at me, nodding her head after subtly pointing at Ben and Angela talking. It looked like I had a conspirator in getting the two together. Now it was my time to gaze longingly at Edythe as she talked animatedly to her family. Edythe wanted to keep her involvement with Bella to a minimum until she could talk with her brother. So, she made an excuse to escape the situation. The first member of her family she runs into is her brother Edward, followed shortly by Alice and Jasper. Edythe is trying to work her thoughts out but realizes for her brother there is a better way. She tapped Edward, pointed to her head, and focused on all her thoughts from today. As Edward absorbed her thoughts, he staggered back a few steps. He looks at Edythe. This complicates things. I am happy you found someone who touches you so deeply without the trials I find myself facing. I am actually a bit jealous. Alice speaks up. So you finally realized it, did you? Jasper smiled at Edythe at the same time. Emmett walked up with his arm around Rosalie. Realize what? Rosalie looked on with a lack of interest. It looks like there is another meeting at the table tonight, Emmett. Moving to this town has been good for the twins, Jasper said. He then looked at Edward apologetically. I am sorry, Edward, that was thoughtless of me. It's okay, Jasper. I think I have it handled for now. Edythe looked at everyone. We should get to our table and talk a bit there. Good idea. You should always try and find a way to be in the area of someone you like, so they can admire you. You are finally using your looks, Edythe. I am so proud of you. Rosalie showed a glimmer of interest in something finally. After going through the line and collecting their props, they all head to their usual table. Edythe immediately looked for Thomas and saw him at his table. She looked on enviously as he interacted with everyone there. While she was focused on him, he turned in her direction and smiled at her with so much warmth that Edythe wanted desperately to go sit with him. But that would not be comfortable for the rest of his friends. As she looked at him, she saw Lauren giving Thomas googly eyes and trying to recapture his attention. She felt a bit of anger, a bit of fear, and a lot of worry all at once, and suddenly Jasper was beside her and the feelings bled away. Careful, Edythe. Those feelings lead to nothing but pain, for everyone. What was that feeling, Jasper? I have never felt something like that before. It was almost like seeing Edward in the driver's seat of my car, but much more intense. I want to hurt that girl Lauren, but every instinct is telling me not to look in her head to see why. Jasper chuckled. That, my dear moody teenager, was jealousy. I have seen that emotion be the ruin of relationships and cities alike. Jasper directed Edythe to the table, and everyone sat down. Edward looked at Thomas's table, being careful not to look at Bella. You really don't want to investigate her head, sister. It's the same as all the boys looking at you in college but from a different perspective. Edythe thought for a moment and then her eyes went sharp. I think I should have a conversation with the little girl and tell her to shut her hormones off for a couple of years. Maybe she will be a better student then. She put her hand to her chin in thought. I could have that conversation with every girl in school, minus Bella. She looked at Edward with a smile. I bet the average test score would rise. Quickly, Edward saw the plan unfold completely in Edythe's mind. Remember what we talked about concerning your compulsions. Only in serious cases, sis. Edythe looked at her brother. But I am very serious, he is mine. No one should be thinking about him like that. Trust me, I know. You should hear the way every boy in school thinks about Bella. I have envisioned putting the Newton kid through a wall more times than I have ever thought possible. At least you can turn your gift off. So, how do I stop that from happening? Edythe asked the table. You make sure he thinks only of you in that way and claim ownership by rubbing their nose in you being next to him. Then these sheep will keep their distance. Rosalie said. Edythe looked at her siblings and wondered who the best person was to go to for advice on how to make Thomas hers. Alice and Jasper. No, that was destined from when Alice woke up. Rosalie and Emmett. No, what worked for them wouldn't for me and Thomas. We were just too different from them. She then looked at her brother who was looking at Bella through someone else's mind and sighed. Esme and Carlisle it is. Chapter 34 Mud Peacepaw. Thomas after lunch was gym, but I had a doctor's note because of the accident and didn't play any volleyball. Instead, I sat on the bleachers and continued to fill in the drawings I had done of Edythe earlier in the day until the class was over. Walking into Spanish class, one saw someone new in the class, well, not new as I had heard his name at every roll call. Edward Cullen had finally graced the class with his presence. But in all honesty, Thomas thought Edward could have been here yesterday when he was at home. With two Cullens in the room, the sweet smell was almost overpowering. I wondered again if it had to do with their skincare products. I walked to my seat, which was very close to his, sat, and turned to address him. I hope you are as tired about hearing this as I am, but thank you for yesterday. If it hadn't been for you, my sister would have died in that accident. I couldn't get to her in time. If there is ever anything I can do to repay you, please ask me. Edward looked at me. I may have pulled her out of the way of the initial hit, but what you did saved both me and your sister. So, you owe me nothing. In fact, I owe you if anything here. Let's just call it a day then. I held out my hand. My name is Thomas Raizel. It is good to meet you, Edward. It is good to meet you as well, Thomas. As you know, my name is Edward Cullen. I believe you know my brothers Jasper and Emmett as well as my sisters Alice and Edythe. As much as they talk about you, I feel I know you already. Thomas smiled. Don't forget, I was introduced to your dad yesterday at the hospital. The rest of class wasn't anything special. I did notice Edward looked at me more than I thought normal. I even saw him wince at one point and hold his head like he had a throbbing headache. But it must have passed quickly because he was back to normal in no time. I just shrugged my mental shoulders and concentrated on class. When school was finally over, I met Bella at her truck. She was acting a little moody today, like someone had done something to get on her bad side. I knew better than to bring it up right away, so I put my curiosity away for now and would ask later. I have to say, I am curious to meet one of Charlie's friends, and find out what passes for pizza here. Too bad they don't have a Papa Murphy's take and bake here. That was perfect back in Phoenix. Bella smiled. I am not sure if the one by the old house was glad we left, or upset over the loss of the money they made off you. Now that he had her talking and smiling, so what had you in a bad mood when I got in the truck? Just a boy in biology. If he wants to ignore me, then I will just do the same thing. See if I care. Thomas at that point quickly dropped the subject and backed away from it like it was a bomb just waiting to go off in his lap. Luckily, they were pulling into the driveway at that point. Quick to get to his room, Thomas pulled out his phone. I don't know how you do it with so many siblings. Just one keeps my hands full. Surprisingly fast, Thomas got a reply. Having more than one gives them room to spread the issues out among everyone. Why? What did you do to upset Bella? Not me. Some boy in her biology class is ignoring her and she didn't take it well, which is surprising in and of itself. She normally doesn't want anyone's attention. Sounds like she knows how to handle it. What are you doing today? Alice said you guys finally got your art project assigned. Yeah, I will do a couple of concept drawings, but Charlie has a friend coming over later. Billy Black, from the reservation, I think. They plan to watch a hockey game tonight. But hey, I get pizza out of it, so I will watch some as well. After about 15 minutes without a reply, Thomas reread his text and realized he didn't give her anything to reply to. What about you? Any plans tonight? After about 5 more minutes of silence, nothing special, just going to sit with the family, watch a movie, and then maybe later do some homework. I did a quick run in my head about movies that were dropping to video this month, watching anything good. There is a family wrestling tournament going on to decide between Troy, Without a Paddle, and Aliens vs. Predator. I cringed at that last choice. Pray that whoever wants AVP loses badly. It was such a disappointment. But the other two I thought were good, just a question if you want action or comedy. That's my thoughts anyway. Bella and I went to a bunch of movies to give her mom time to be alone with her new husband, so just about everything coming to video this year I have seen. Anything to keep an eye out for this year. I thought a moment. For comedy, Dodgeball was a standout. Action was a tie between Man on Fire and The Bourne Supremacy. Robot was a good future type movie. The Lord of the Rings finished with Return of the King. National Treasure was a good movie also. Oh, almost forgot 50 First Dates. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. Well, it looks like Jasper won, so we are watching Without a Paddle. I will leave you to it then and go help Bella get the house ready for visitors. Enjoy your movie. You enjoy your night also. Text me if you hear any good stories from your dad's friend. I hear his tribe has some interesting myths. When I got downstairs, I noticed Bella was putting her jacket on with her keys in hand. Where ya headed, Bells? I was going to pick up the pizza for tonight. I called in the order almost an hour ago seeing as it was so big. Let me get dressed and I will go with you. Less chance of the pizza arriving with that freshly dropped on the ground look that way. Bella looked like she wanted to say something but just stopped and nodded her head. Thanks. By the time they got back with the pizzas, Bella and Thomas saw Charlie getting out of his cruiser and then reach into his back seat. There was also a parked truck in the front of the house. It was a tan Chevy 4X4 with a young man their age helping an older gentleman out of the passenger side and into a wheelchair. By their complexion it was easy to guess they were American Indian, so I assumed this was our company for the game tonight. I grabbed the pizzas and opened the door after Bella parked behind Charlie since the tan Chevy was in her spot for now. As soon as we gathered, Charlie placed 2 6-packs of Tallboy Blue Ribbon beer in the lap of the older man in the wheelchair. Then said, I got the vitamin R. I was confused until I saw the beer brand was Rainier, and then I got the joke. Well done, Chief. He then held up 2 paper bags, Harry Clearwater's homemade fish fry, and offered them to Charlie. Good man. Charlie took them and handed them to Bella. These go in the fridge to keep them from drying out. You guys will love it. Best in the state. He then made the introduction to both Belle and me. This dance star is Mr. Billy Black, a real live Indian chief. Jacob here is his son and I'm sure a licensed driver. Right. Charlie gave a hard stare that Jacob didn't quite return. Bella just nodded as Charlie moved to the back of Billy's wheelchair and started pushing him toward the house. Letting the kids do their own introductions. Hi, I'm Jacob. We used to make mud pies together. I barely smothered my laugh. Smooth, this guy, is not. Bella didn't do much better. Instead of letting the poor guy down easy and admitting she didn't remember him, she faked that she remembered. Oh, no. Yeah, I remember. I cringed again and glanced around and saw Charlie putting a ramp over the stairs to the house. It looked well used, so Billy must have been a regular visitor. Bella finally got over her awkwardness and introduced me. This is my brother, Thomas. I nodded. Good to meet you, Jacob. I'd offer you my hand, but I wouldn't want to drop the pies I'm carrying. Sounds like you and Bella here ate plenty of mud when you were younger and don't need more now. Both Bella and Jacob flushed at my words. Shall we head in? It doesn't feel right to be holding pizza and not eating it. The 3 walked into the house and I followed Bella and Jacob to the kitchen where they pulled out some paper plates and started dishing out the pizza. Jacob first took a plate to his dad in the front room and Bella did the same for Charlie. While they were doing that, I put the beer and the fish fry that was on the counter in the fridge after pulling 2 beers free from their tab. Charlie, Mr. Black, you 2 want these beers now or something else to go with the food first? We will take the beer, Thomas, Charlie shouted from the room they were in. And don't call me Mr. Black, it's just plain old Billy, came Billy's reply. Chapter 35. Finishing the game. 1 loaded down a plate with pizza and grabbed the 2 beers before heading into the front room to see Billy's wheelchair parked next to Charlie's lazy boy. I handed off the beers and went to sit down on the couch. Billy's hand brushed mine when I passed him the beer. You're going to warm my beer up holding it with your hand so hot? You running a temperature? Thomas smiled sheepishly. Nope, I feel fine. Must have been the hand I was holding the pizzas with. Though Bella thinks I stole some heat from Phoenix to keep me warm here in Forks. Billy went back to the game but occasionally looked over to see Thomas running through his plate, which held almost half a pizza in what he thought was record time. Minutes later, I got up to get more pizza and politely asked if they needed anything while I was in the kitchen. It seemed that both Jacob and Bella had no interest in joining them in the front room for the game just yet. Both men answered in the negative, so I went to refill my plate. I nodded at Jacob and Bella, who were in the middle of an awkward silence that I wanted no part of. Jacob's eyes went a little wide. You're done with that plate already? It was half a pizza. Bella responded. He is only beginning. He will get 2 more plates the same size by the time he is done. Wicked. You should join an eating contest. You would get to eat all you want and win money at the same time. I just laughed. Got to keep my energy up for exercising. I then filled my plate, leaving Bella's cheese pizza alone even though I know it will come to me to finish it. If she eats 3 pieces, it will mean she was starving. The sudden cheers from the front room told me something good happened in the game, so I went back and took my seat in time for the replay. During a commercial break, Charlie got up to go to the bathroom and grab another beer. Billy turned to me and asked, "So, tell me about yourself, Thomas. Where is your family from?" "Well, my mother Nancy was from here in Forks. She was Renee's older sister, and the only thing I know about my dad was that he died in a hiking accident before I was born. Mom said he was from somewhere near the China-Nepal border. They met in law school. Though come to think of it, Mom once told me a story about Dad's grandma being a Quileute princess. But I don't know how true that is. That does sound a bit off. We don't have princesses in the tribe. Your dad must have been a giant of a man if your size says anything." Charlie walked back into the room. "You ain't joking there, but I think young Thomas here will have him beat. Still growing even at his age. Not to mention all the working out he does. Not that I'm complaining. The whole department is getting in shape due to the energy he has brought to the station. Him and, well, never mind. You stopped talking quick. What is it?" Billy asked. Charlie looked like he didn't want to answer, but since it was a direct question, no one you want to hear about Billy. "Let's just leave it at that and let's get back to the game." That caught my interest, but Billy just tightened his lips for a moment and acted like nothing had been said. I just shrugged and went back to eating and paying just enough attention to keep up with the game in case I was asked something. The next time I got up, Billy asked for another beer while I refilled my plate. When I walked into the kitchen, I heard Bella saying, "Well, I think I am going to go finish some homework. Enjoy the soccer game, guys. Nice seeing you again, Jacob." Then she went into the living room to make her excuses and goodnight to Billy and Charlie. Jacob looked confused. "I thought we came to watch a hockey game." "That's classic Bella. No interest in sports at all. I will tell her the Penguins lost by 1 touchdown tomorrow and she will just shrug." Thomas laughed as he pulled Billy's beer from the fridge and refilled his plate with a few pieces of the cheese pizza mixed in, so it got eaten. Jacob just watched me in wonder and then followed me into the living room to watch the game. The rest of the evening was just a bunch of guys watching the game and enjoying the good food and drink. By the end of it, I was drawing out some ideas for my art project and only half paying attention to the game. When it was over, Billy and Charlie started talking about random subjects ranging from better fishing come spring, to common spots where the tourists would get lost in the forest. At a yawn from Jacob, Billy finally called it a night. "Better get this one home, it's a school night after all. It was good to meet you, Thomas. You should come to the reservation sometime, you and Sam Yulee will get along great." I thought about asking Billy about the girl I saw screaming out her frustrations a week back, but decided it may be something personal for her and left it alone. I simply said my goodbyes there in the living room and watched Charlie walk them out to their truck. I went upstairs and knocked on Bella's door but got no response. I could see her light on, so I cracked the door and saw she had her headphones on, so I walked in. When she noticed me, she took her headphones off and looked at me questioningly. "Let me get your keys so I can move your truck once the blacks leave. That way Charlie doesn't have to do it in the morning." Understanding dawned in her eyes and she pointed towards her desk. "I found them under her government class book. I'll put them on the table so you don't have to look for them in the morning." With a simple, "Thanks," Bella returned to her math homework. I went back to my room and waited to hear Charlie come back in so I could move Bella's truck. When the time came, I walked out to start Bella's truck, but then the thought of having to wait for it to be warm enough to engage the transmission irritated me, so I just put it in neutral and pushed the truck into the street and then walked to the cab and turned the tires and pushed it into its spot from the cab. "Much easier," I spoke out loud. Walking back to the door I felt like I was being watched, so I stopped, looking into the nearby tree line to try and make out any movement, but soon the feeling disappeared. For some reason, I instinctively sniffed at the air as if trying to smell something. Shaking my head, I went inside. Charlie was cleaning up the beer cans in the front room. "That was quick, you forget the keys or something." I didn't even hear the truck start up. Didn't feel like the wait, so I just put it in neutral and pushed it in place. I said it offhandedly like it wasn't nothing to move such a heavy truck. Charlie just shook his head. "Did you remember to put it back in gear?" I answered before thinking, "Of course I Oh yeah, I'll be right back. Charlie just laughed good-naturedly at me as I ran outside to make sure Belle still had a truck in the morning. When I came back in, I asked Charlie, "You ever get any wildlife this close to town?" I felt like something, or someone was watching me from the tree line a bit ago. It has happened a few times when running in the mornings also. It's not unusual, but nothing that will cause you any harm if you don't look to harm it. Most anything willing to attack a man leaves a large trail before it gets near town, but you be careful regardless. I'll get you some pepper spray to run with in case you need to discourage something. Thanks, that may come in handy. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Think I will go get ready for bed. Night, Charlie. Night, kid. I started to walk upstairs but paused. Hey, Charlie. Why did you cut off your sentence about me and Jasper working out being the reason Jeff and Ken are suddenly into fitness again? Charlie gave a deep sigh. Billy and I don't see eye to eye on the Cullens. His tribe had some myths about pale strangers, and once the first Quileute got a look at Drive Cullen, well, no one from the tribe has gone to the hospital since. Charlie shook his head. It frustrates me when I see that kind of thing. So, I try not to talk about it and Billy tries not to hold it against me. It's complicated, I guess. Weird, not sure I understand why they single out the Cullens though. Comparatively, all Caucasians are pale to the Quileutes. I went upstairs and decided to take a break from homework and filled in some more of the pictures I had drawn of Edythe earlier. Once it hit 11, I grabbed my phone and texted, "Have a good night, see you in class," to Edythe. Had I been looking out the window at that time, there was a good chance I would have seen the glow of a phone screen as Edythe got my message. Chapter 36 Advice from Esme. Edythe Pav. I stared at the small screen in my hand. Have a good night, see you in class. I hesitated. Should I text back? Does he think I am asleep? What should I say? As these thoughts roll through my head, I notice the light in the room I assume is his go out. A soft sigh escapes my lips as I close my phone and put it in my pocket. As I stare at the window separating me from him, the conversation I had with Esme runs through my head yet again. Scene break earlier that day, driving home on day one of Edward ignoring Bella. I barely had to open my mind to Edward's thoughts before the wave of his confusion hit me. He was happy that he was able to ignore Bella during their class together today. It was more difficult than he thought it would be, but he managed. He was trying to convince himself that it would get easier as time went by. Sure, Bella seemed hurt by his sudden attitude, but what was a little hurt feelings compared to endangering her life to the monster he thought himself to be? As I tuned him out, I looked past the trees zooming by on the road to our house. I picked up my phone and looked at the number that was there. He asked me for my number. Will he call or will he text? What is he doing today? Suddenly, the car stopped, and I realized we were home already. Edward got out of the car and ran off into the woods without even a word to us. I just shook my head and went in search of my mother. I found her in her study and politely knocked on its door. Am I interrupting? She smiled at me. No, dear, I heard you coming up the stairs. How was your day? Did you see Thomas? I did, and he asked me to thank you for doing my hair. What was it he said? Oh yes. You must thank your mother for me, she is very skilled. Any professional can turn someone plain into beautiful with clothing and makeup. But to turn someone like you who is naturally gorgeous into even more gorgeous is no easy task. His reactions were a bit stumbling at first, but he told me that I looked exceptional today. It felt very nice to hear him say that. Esme smiles. He sounds like he has a bit of silver in his tongue. He just isn't used to using it yet. How did you feel when he told you his thoughts? My whole body felt lighter and warmer at the same time. I wanted to ask him to say it again. Even though I don't usually like those types of compliments. Esme laughed. Oh dear, you will find that many things others have done in the past will have a whole new meaning when Thomas does them. Well, it's not the 1920s now, so I will not be waiting until he comes to talk to Dad or Edward before we start dating. Edythe frowned for a moment. But what do I tell him about me, or our condition? My gift doesn't work on him, so once I tell him he will know forever. This doesn't just affect me. How will our interactions affect Edward and Bella? This is so complicated, so much can go wrong, and again because of Thomas, Alice can't see the repercussions of anything attached to him. Men are so frustrating sometimes. Indeed, they are. But we frustrate them just as much, dear, if not more. Now, tell me, how do you feel about Thomas? And before you answer too quickly, are you willing to go against the coven for those feelings? Will you turn him, or have him turn to keep us safe from the Volturi? If your brother can finally work himself up to leaving Bella, will you stay and forever tie our families together? Knowing the pain that would cause Edward and Bella both. Or, in the worst case, what will you do if Edward fails to control himself and kills Bella? You have read a bit about Thomas's life, so you can imagine what more loss could drive him to. Esme got up and walked to her daughter as she saw each question hit home in varied ways. She pulled Edythe into a hug. These are just the questions that we know about right now. Pursuing Thomas will bring so many more questions, and we never like all the answers we get in life. You can only try and prepare. As I was being comforted by my mother, I heard a ding indicating a text message had been received. I don't know how you do it with so many siblings. Just one keeps my hands full. After reading it, I chuckled and shook my head. Sounds like Bella is giving Thomas trouble, I said aloud. I started texting back rapidly, wishing the phone had a keyboard instead of 3 letters on each number. Wonder if he set her off or if it was something else. I first asked my mother and then finished my thoughts in text to Thomas. After reading his reply, I looked up at Esme, who was too polite to read over my shoulder. Looks like Bella isn't happy with Edward's new plan to ignore her. Do you think it's the vampire allure, or does she actually see him for who he is? I truly hope she isn't just interested in him for the outside trapping of our nature. Edward has so much more to offer if she can see past the shell. Esme responded. You're his mother, of course you would say that. A thought suddenly hit me. Is the allure the only reason Thomas looks at me? Mom, is there a way to test if he, I mean she, only likes him for the vampire looks and smell? Esme looked at her daughter with a faint smile. Only with time, my dear one. It will be difficult for you, I mean Edward. With him being so used to being able to tell what people think at a glance. This will be a whole new experience without any gift helping. I pretended to ignore the slip of her tongue, as she pretended to ignore my own slip. As I texted Thomas back and tried to change the subject to him and Alice working together on their art project. She was very excited at not being able to see much in her visions because of Thomas. Must be nice to only see the bright side of not having her usual cheat. Reading his reply to that sent shock and panic through me, and I nearly shouted. Ephraim Black's heir is going to be at his house tonight. He is going to break the treaty and tell them about us. We need a meeting about this. I was panicked at the thought right away. Without waiting on Esme, I rushed downstairs and yelled for everyone to come to the table. I tried to call Edward, but he didn't pick up, so I left him a message to get home as quickly as he could. As I hung up from leaving Edward the message, I noticed everyone was entering the dining room, minus Carlyle, who was at work, and Edward, who was running the forest. Emmett was frowning. What is it? I almost had a best 2 out of 3 to get to pick the movie tonight. Aliens vs. Predators sounds really good. Jasper just smirked. Sure you were, but I want to hear my hummingbird laugh, so when I win it will be without a paddle that we watch on the picture box tonight. Alice jumped up and kissed Jasper, then turned to her sister. What has you all in a tizzy? I don't see anything happening that would affect us. I held up my phone. Thomas told me that Billy Black will be at his house tonight. It was his grandfather that we made the truce with. I am afraid he will tell them about us and break it. Alice held out her hand for the phone. Let me see what he said. It could be that because of Thomas, I can't see it. After reading the message, Alice frowned. He says that his uncle, Bella's dad, and Billy are getting together to watch a hockey game. How are you connecting this to him wanting to break the treaty? I thought for a moment. The timing is just too coincidental. What do we do if he tells them? Alice tried to calm her sister down. It's okay, Edythe. I still have visions of us being here for the foreseeable future. Bella's dad has lived here in Forks all his life, so it's no surprise that the chief of police knows and is friendly with the chief of the reservation. Billy Black didn't say anything when we first moved here, and nothing has changed since then. No unexplained missing people, and we have stayed off their land as agreed. He has no reason to break the treaty. I tried to clear my thoughts for a moment and push the panic away. Alice made a certain amount of sense, but I was still too scared to not think that Black would break the treaty. What do I do? Chapter 37 Movie night. I remained at the table in my seat as most of the rest of the family returned to what they were doing before my panicked cries interrupted their afternoon. Esme gently patted my head. Relax, dear, we can face anything together as a family. It will all work out in the end. Alice grabbed my hand, and her eyes went out of focus for a moment. Then she focused her gaze on me and said, "Look at the vision I just had, Edythe." When I reached out and connected to her mind, I was amazed to see myself in a blue dress and my hair done up in a feathered look. The dress was long and form-fitting, but strapless and more risque than anything I had worn yet in my long life. I also looked very happy, but a tinge of worry still lurked about my face. Then the vision faded out. I looked at Alice. What was that? When? I couldn't tell. Alice looked perplexed. I can't be sure, but I was looking at the night of the spring dance to see if Jasper was interested in going, and that was part of my vision. Guess I better get started making the dresses for us all to wear. The only one I don't see going is Edward. I will have to look into what he has planned for that day later. As I sat thinking and trying to push down my fears, I heard another ping from my phone. What about you? Any plans tonight? I stared at my phone and came up with a plan to ask him to go somewhere with me today so he wouldn't be there with Black. It was a good idea at first, but then reality reared its head. If Black was going to say something, then he would, whether Thomas was there or not. Besides, would he even change his plans last minute for me? I could try to get close enough to Black to use my compulsion on him, but if it wore off, it could be considered me breaking the treaty, and I couldn't endanger my family like that. Realizing that I was taking too long to reply, I gave a simple, truthful answer. Nothing special, just going to sit with the family, watch a movie, and then maybe later do some homework. When he answered, I tried to keep the conversation going as casually as I could. Not being used to this, I think I failed miserably. Why am I asking about movies like I care about them? Waiting for his reply about the theater releases last year, I hear Emmett storming through the house. He was definitely not happy, so I assumed he lost to Jasper again. I wondered if he would ever realize that the times he won were when Alice didn't care about his movie choice, so Jasper let him win. Don't take it too hard, Emmett. Thomas says the Aliens vs. Predator movie was a huge disappointment. Emmett looked happy about that for a moment, but then he frowned. How do I know his movie tastes are any good? I'll just watch it by myself later tonight and decide. Emmett smiled and went looking for Rosalie. The fast change of mood was one of the things Edythe liked the most about Emmett. The guy just couldn't stay mad about anything. Well, nothing not related to Rosalie at least. She shuddered at the memory of the last vampire that touched Rosalie without her permission. Having your arm ripped off and burnt so you couldn't remember the feel of Rosalie's skin in your hand was a bit overboard, but that was just a part of Emmett. The coven decided to leave England shortly after that happened. No one really cared about leaving, as we were only there looking into rumors about a different species of vampires. The idea that there was another group of vampires more like the traditional movie ones was laughable anyway. When Thomas decided to go help Bella set up, I just asked him to tell me if he heard any good stories from the Indian chief and went to my room to see if I could distract myself with some music. Later I was called down for the movie night and actually found the movie entertaining. But my mind was still on Thomas and the possibility he was learning about the true nature of the Cullens. As soon as it got dark, I found myself drawn to the woods outside the Swan house. As I did my best to listen in on the conversation in the house, I quietly thought to myself, stalker much. The evening conversations ran about what would be normal for a family watching sports until I heard Billy ask about Thomas's ancestry. When I heard the story about Thomas's dad maybe being part Quileute, I thought back, and surprisingly enough I did remember a ship from the east bringing silks to the area. They weren't too happy with the prices, but they had been blown off course, and with silk being a luxury, they didn't get the best prices. Me being a woman meant I wasn't allowed to get too deep into the business side of the town back then. Especially since the ship made landfall at the La Push beach and the family wasn't allowed there. By this point, I had convinced myself that Billy wasn't going to reveal any Cullen secrets, but I couldn't make myself leave just yet. I stayed and continued to listen, even after the Quileute chief left. I watched as Thomas came outside and pushed Bella's truck into the spot Billy Black's truck had occupied not long after it left. Unfortunately, I must have focused on him a bit too much, because he stopped and looked in my direction, making me panic and withdraw as quietly as I could. Damn, he is way too aware of his surroundings. I thought to myself. I lost a few moments of conversation as I was repositioning myself in the forest, and when I concentrated back on the voices in the house, I heard Thomas ask about not bringing up Jasper earlier in the evening. When Charlie told Thomas about the superstitious tribal story, I hoped Thomas would leave it there. Not long after that, I felt my phone vibrate since I put it on silent mode and opened it up to see Thomas's last message of the night. Not wanting to return home just yet, I decided to follow an old scent left by Thomas walking through these woods. Eventually, I came upon a rock that was saturated in his smell. I know in my head that it was pathetic, but something made me want to sit there and think for a while. It made me feel just a bit closer to him. I started an inner monologue as I sat watching the dark clouds moving overhead. I need to slow my thinking down. Stop looking to jump directly into a relationship with him. Learn to be friends first and see if he can handle the truth before revealing it to him. Protecting him from the trollops of this small town would be a friendly thing to do, wouldn't it? I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't sense Edward getting closer until he was almost beside me. I got your message. Did Black break the treaty? No. It seems I was worried for nothing. Then why are you still here, sis? I am trying to get my thoughts about Thomas settled, at least a little. He makes me feel things I never have before. Why do I care about his thoughts so much? Is it because I can't hear them and it's my natural curiosity, or is it something more? I have been asking myself the same thing about Isabella. The monster inside me craves her blood like nothing I ever imagined possible, but there is something more to her than that. My gift doesn't work on her. My curse wants to devour her. My humanity, which I thought long gone, wants to ask Chief Swan for his permission to speak with her and maybe go for a walk or two. Edward takes a deep breath. Edythe, I am going to ask something unfair of you. Something a brother should never ask of his sister. Just for a time, would you hold back on your feelings towards Thomas? He held up a hand before I could answer. Look in my mind and see what Alice's visions have shown, and then let me explain. I reached out with my mind and saw a vision. It was Edward running through the woods at vampire speeds. He had a worried look on his face and I could see he was trying to catch up with someone. When he finally overtook the figure in front of him, I saw it was Bella. But her eyes were blood red and she was a vampire on the hunt. The vision stopped there and shifted to another one. It was a sunny day and she watched a figure in the middle of a meadow. The skin reflected the sunlight, so there was no doubt it was a vampire, and as his sister, Edythe knew the figure was Edward at a glance. As she approached him, she noticed he was hunched over someone. As she drew closer, Edward turned toward her and hissed violently at her, warning her away from the figure of Bella he held in his arms. Bella was pale and lifeless, her eyes glassy and lacking any light. Edward's eyes, however, were bright red. Chapter 38 The twins' plan. I shrank into myself after the visions finished playing in my head and slumped down more on the rock where I sat. Poor Edward. Both visions show his greatest fear. Turn Bella into a monster or become a monster himself. If I was honest with myself, I really didn't think that being a vampire was a monstrous thing. It could be, yes. But if I needed to feed on humans, I was better equipped than any to pick and choose the worst kind of humans. Once, Edward and I had done this. But unlike me, Edward couldn't turn his gift off, and even to the monstrous humans we were monsters, and their last thoughts of fear and helplessness started to affect Edward. So, we returned to our family and rededicated to the vegetarian diet. In fact, of all my family I think I am the most Volturi-like vampire. The only difference was that I refused to consume the innocent. The Volturi are too indiscriminate in my opinion, especially these days. I again wondered if Carlyle and Edward's work on clone blood would be accepted by them. Our numbers in this world were small enough that vampires could exist on donated blood alone if we got organized about it. But too many enjoyed the hunt, the power they held over the majority of the world. Clone blood would not satisfy those types of vampires. Edward spoke and interrupted my thoughts, reminding me of his request to distance myself from Thomas. This is some of what Alice has seen, but I think there is a third path that I can walk. If I truly love Bella, then can I stay beside her and keep her human? Keep the monster from both our lives. My hope is that I can watch from afar and just revel in her life, a silent witness. Protect her from the darkness of the world. I am asking for some time to see if my plan will work. Does that mean you want me to walk this path beside you? Forever watching Thomas from the shadows. Never having him for myself. If that is the life you want for yourself, brother, then you are welcome to it. But I think you are grasping at straws, trying to protect only yourself. Have you asked yourself what Bella may want? Or are you making her decision for her? He frowned and harshly asked, "You would condemn Thomas to our life? The life of blood and loneliness. Rulers that feel they can do as they wish so long as they look good doing it. I would not. But I also will not hide what I am if he truly cares for me. The Volturi do not know everything, they don't have eyes behind every bush. It would not be hard to hide. For years from them. Think of the many that do keep themselves from the reach of arrow and keys. To this day, they hunt the rulers before them. Yet the Romanian coven still wanders the world. In your fear, don't make the Volturi out to be more than they are. A power, yes, but not an omnipotent one." Edward asked with frustration in his voice. "Then what is your plan, Edythe?" "I was thinking of one before you got here, and I think it may work. I want to get to know him. See if he can accept the weirdness around me without asking too many questions, or accept it when I tell him I can't answer just yet. You have seen how observant he is, he spends so much time with the least human of our coven. Able to be around Alice when she has visions but not bug her about it or think her less for her pause moments. Spend time with Jasper and only brush the question of the scars he can clearly see. Don't you think he sees that Jasper doesn't sweat during their workout sessions? He watches us not eat at school. I take a breath from my rant. Despite him seeing more of us than any human in the school or even the town, he continues to spend more time with us than any non-vampire we have ever met. I will not hide from him as you wish to do with Bella. I will not voluntarily tell him about us until you say it's okay. I can agree with that for now. I am not trying to make things with you and Bella more difficult, Edward, but you have to realize that her thoughts and feelings matter too. Just like mine and Thomas's do. We can't read their thoughts, so it may be better to relearn the human way of communicating. I plan to ask him questions and get to know him, and hope he has questions for me." With that said, I stood and walked back home, leaving Edward behind to come to terms with my plan. Pav Thomas. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. I was happy that people had finally gotten over the accident with Bella and Edward. Now I was just Thomas, their large classmate. Coach Clapp was still persistently trying to get me into some kind of sport, but he was finally running out of steam. My art project had stalled for some reason. I had plenty of concept drawings, but none of them felt right yet. The idea of music was such a broad concept that I couldn't settle on which aspect to focus on. The musician, the listener, the instrument. I was getting short on time and really needed some inspiration. Another frustration was that my workouts were no longer very fulfilling. I wasn't getting the muscle burn that I was used to. Anymore. It was only the days me and Jasper spared in the forest that I felt like I was making any progress. I was still growing, and my muscles had not lost any definition. Last check I was now 6 feet 6 inches and my weight had increased to 283. I really hoped my height would stop going up because it would mean standing out even more than I do now. But apparently my growth hadn't put Edythe off. She was very curious about me, asking some of the most off-the-wall questions I had ever heard. When I told her about my top 10 movies, she seemed fixated on why I like The Lost Boys so much. That was an on and off conversation that lasted 2 days. The other movie she was interested in was The Crow. It was one she hadn't watched before but loved to talk about once she had. Bella was getting by and fitting in finally. Her friend circle was small, but in this town that was normal. She still preferred to read her old book and stare at Edward more than expanding her social circle, but who was I to talk? Tyler had joined our lunch group and was trying everything he could think of to make things right with Bella. If only he realized, he was going about it in the most opposite way she would appreciate. Ben and Angela were starting to get comfortable talking together, so there was hope between me and Bella that Angela would ask Ben out to the spring girls' choice dance. They would make a great couple, and as both their friends we couldn't be happier for them. Edward was still ignoring Bella. I had hoped that him saving her would thaw some of the ice Bella said he had for her during class. I couldn't make sense of their interactions, Edward simply ignored her but wasn't rude or hostile from what little Bella told me. If he didn't like Bella, all he had to do was say so and she would accept that. But just ignoring her was making her more curious about him and then throw in her own stubbornness, and you have a recipe for an obsession. I thought about talking to Edythe about it but then I remembered how badly that went last time and just decided to keep my nose out of it for now. If I saw it becoming something unhealthy, then I would have to take some action though. During Spanish, Edward and I were just classmates that didn't talk much and I was fine with it. I paused my wandering thoughts to admire the surrounding forest. You could tell that spring was definitely beginning. Traces of new green buds were evident on every tree and some moss and mushrooms had already grown considerably. Since I wasn't getting much of a workout during my actual workouts, I have noticed my temper getting shorter. Being short with Bella was bad enough, but I almost lost my temper at Mr. Banner for him implying that I was cheating on his tests. Telling him to shove his unsubstantiated idea up his ass was one thing, but getting up and approaching him with nothing but violence in my eyes was going too far. I managed to stop myself and just left the classroom, but it still resulted in Charlie having to come to the school and an hour-long conversation about intimidating the teachers with my physical size. Mr. Banner was also told to work on his professional behavior as a teacher and stop implying that anyone breezing through his class was cheating. It was implied that he had been complaining that the Cullens were cheating their way through his class too. This time in the forest was helping me contain my anger in the same way working out did in the past. As I looked around, I noticed that it was unusually quiet all of a sudden. The birds had stopped making noise and it felt like the forest was holding its breath. I heard something in the distance that sounded like a snort. Like something taking a great breath in and out again. I quickly reached for the pepper spray that Charlie gave me because I knew that now was the time for hungry bears to be waking up and start looking for food and mates. Chapter 39 Samueli I heard the snuffing sound a couple of more times and even faintly heard the sound of something brushing against the trees. I started looking around some more and realized that I was near where I met the girl screaming a few weeks back. God, that feels like a lifetime ago. I started backing away from the sounds I could hear in the distance and started planning retreat routes in my head if I needed to run. When Charlie found out I was spending a lot of time in the woods, he made me and Bella watch a video on dangerous sounds and sights in the forest. The video was played at all travel centers near the area, in the hopes it would help the tourists recognize a danger. Out of nowhere, I heard a voice, "Hello. Is someone there?" The voice was deep and obviously male. It sounded loud in the forest, breaking the silence that had descended moments ago. I sounded out, but just enough to reach the person asking. "Over here, but you shouldn't shout too much. I thought I heard the snuffing of a bear not long ago." Don't want to draw in a newly awakened one by shouting. After I answered the voice, I could hear someone headed my way. I saw movement finally as a man stepped from around a large tree. He had short black hair and brown eyes, copper skin, and stood about 6 feet 6 inches tall. His frame was large and full of long muscle. He wasn't cut like I was. His muscles looked rounder and more natural, less exaggerated than mine. I also noted that he was only wearing a pair of cut-off jeans and no shoes. It was easy to see he was an indigenous Indian, so I assumed he was a part of the Quileute tribe. I waved at him and made a show of putting my pepper spray back into my pocket. "Hello, I'm Thomas. I hope I didn't come too far into Quileute land, but with no visible barrier it's hard to tell. It isn't a big deal. We don't mind hikers as long as they are respectful of the forest and don't leave any trash. My name is Sam. Thanks for letting me know, Sam. I came across a girl a few weeks ago and caught her at the wrong time. She was less than friendly, so I couldn't ask any questions." Sam smiled and shook his head. "These cliffs are part of tribal lore. It is said that if your bad emotions are overwhelming you, then if you come here to let them out, they will not affect the peace of the tribe." He laughed a bit and continued, "Though I think some smart parent made up that story to get their kids to leave the camp and do their screaming away from their ears. The elders probably adopted it as lore to make dealing with hormonal teens easier." As Sam spoke to Thomas, he had a bit of an epiphany. It would also make it apparent to the elders what teens were having anger issues and get them out of camp if they were about to make the change to wolf. He shook his head and returned to his conversation with Thomas. "Thanks for letting me know there was a possible bear nearby. This early in the spring they are not choosy about what they eat. You look a bit familiar. Have we met before?" Thomas looked closer at Sam, thought for a moment, and then answered. Not that I am aware of, but ironically you feel familiar to me as well. I only came to town in January with my sister to live with her dad. So, I can't think of any time we could have met. Thomas thought again about his conversation with Edythe's dad. Though these days everyone claims to be part indigenous Indian, I was just reminded that my great-grandmother was supposed to be from this area. Not that I think that makes me some long-lost royalty like some politicians claim to get the minority vote. Sam laughed at my comment. It could be as simple as blood recognizing blood. Do you wander the woods often? Yeah, it has a calming effect on me. I have a bit of a temper sometimes and a heavy dislike of crowded places. Sam seemed to think for a few minutes. There are many legends in my tribe of the forest calling to you before a great change happens. In the stories, the land offers a calming influence to support you through troubled times. If you find yourself in a situation you can't explain or easily accept, then you should return to the forest. The same thing happened to me a few months ago, and I thought I had gone mad, but the forest calmed me and later my tribe helped me understand what happened. I took in his story and felt he was holding back, but I didn't think I had the right to ask what he didn't want to share. Instead of blowing it off as I first intended, I found my mind clinging on to every word he said. Thanks for the advice, I hope to never need it. But I will keep it in mind. Sam nodded and started to walk away, but then he stopped. One other thing, Thomas, if you ever smell an overly sweet smell that has no place in the forest, you need to be careful. But if you ever smell a sickening sweet smell like burnt sugar, run as fast as you can, and try to get to this stream. You may not be tribe, but blood is still important. With those mysterious parting words, Sam walked back into the forest, and I soon lost sight of him. Pav Sam Yuli. After my parting words with Thomas, I made my way back into the forest far enough that he wouldn't see me and removed my shorts, rolled them up, and put them in the elastic band around my calf. Reaching into the fire in my mind, I invited the warmth to enter my body and make the change. With no pain, my body felt like it simply turned to fluid and then returned to solid form in the shape of a giant wolf. The elders couldn't tell me why I was such a big wolf when, according to Old Quill, his father was a normal-sized wolf. Supposedly the whole black pack in the 1800s all looked like normal wolves, with Ephraim being the biggest, but nowhere near as big as I was. I wonder if Thomas will be as big as me, or Jared for that matter. I think Jared is closest to making the change. I give him a month or so. Thomas feels like he should have made the change already, but something is holding him back. Thinking of all the boys close to my age in the reservation, I tried to guess who would turn before the Cullens left. Jared Cameron, Paul Lahote, Jacob Black. The only other boy close in age is Embry Call, but that can't happen because his mother came to the Quileute reservation from the Macaw reservation already pregnant, so there is no connection to the blood there. I thought again about Jacob Black. He will have the alpha claim when he changes, and I couldn't be happier. It will be nice to have brothers in the pack, but I don't want to be responsible for their lives. I just want to be a member of the tribe and protect our land. I casually loped through the forest in no hurry to be anywhere, just checking the borders of the tribal land. There is plenty of time before I'm supposed to go to Leah's house for dinner. I knew Emily finally made it to town today, so I want to give Leah and her plenty of time to talk and vent to each other. I know that things haven't been easy for Leah because of me, and I have finally come to the decision that I will tell her everything once Emily is gone. The stories talk about imprinting, and they say I will know when it happens. Well, I know I love Leah and it is causing me pain to hurt her so much. I cannot think of my life without her. We are just waiting for her to finish school before we marry anyway. The only thing that will change is that we will no longer be talking about moving off the reservation. As a wolf warrior, I will be needed here. I am sure she will understand that. My steps lighten as I make my decision and finalize it in my head. I won't be able to tell Leah at dinner tonight, but maybe I can drop enough hints that she will be satisfied until next weekend when Emily goes home. I realize that this makes me a bit of a hypocrite. First I couldn't wait for Emily to come and help Leah, and now I can't wait for her to leave so I can tell Leah everything. But that's just fate, I guess. Chapter 40. Stranger in the woods. I held my light windbreaker, which I had once considered a heavy jacket when I lived in Phoenix and considered leaving it at home for this hike. The temperature was barely in the mid-40s Fahrenheit, but even this light jacket felt too hot for me lately. I shook my head and put it on anyway, knowing that Bella would freak out if I went for my hike in just a shirt and pants in what she considered weather too cold to be out in no matter the amount of warm clothing. It had been a week since I had run into Sam in the woods, but I didn't think I would see him or anyone of the tribe today as I planned to stay away from the reservation border. I moved down the stairs and saw Bella in the kitchen. "What ya got planned for today, sis?" I asked as I pulled a glass from the cupboard and filled it from the sink. "I still have that English essay to do and it's due next Friday, so I better get to working on it. Charlie is working the night shift this weekend, so I want to have an easy tour heat dinner for him. Thinking of doing lasagna. Doing that by hand will take a good part of my day. If I finish early, I may go look at the library and see what selection of books they have. Well, if you see Charlie before me, remind him to bring out his dirty clothes so I can get the wash done tonight if I get back early enough, or in the morning if I don't. That goes for you as well." I didn't bother waiting for her reply as I left out the back door and started a light trot through the yard and into the tree line. On reflex, I ran to what I had come to consider my rock and took my bearings. Picking a new direction, I started to walk and let my mind wander. I was growing slightly frustrated with the advancement of my relationship with Edythe. She was obviously hot as hell and there was no way she didn't know I was interested in starting a relationship with her, but she seemed to be keeping me at a distance for some reason. I had never been this interested in a girl before, so I had zero knowledge on how to get past this asking life questions phase that had been going on for nearly 2 weeks. I really liked that she showed interest in me and my likes and dislikes, but she was always kind of vague with a lot of the questions I asked her. She had no problem telling me about her favorite movies or music, but stuff like her favorite candy as a kid, or if she still talks to any childhood friends. Those she tended to evade or give small answers. Her usual response was, "It's been so long, I just don't remember." When I ask about her early life, she is always so vague, just seems weird to me. At that thought, I had to admit that there were a lot of weird things about the Cullen family. Everything from skin color to eye color and their lack of appetite, even their insistence on buying food in the cafeteria but never actually eating any. Jasper being very strong for his size was another weird thing. It's not obvious, but he has moved some heavy weight while being off balance that should have at least caused him to struggle if not hurt himself. With my balance or center of gravity under me I could lift some tremendous weight, but if I don't have that balance then my strength is reduced significantly. My thoughts were interrupted by my awareness of a smell blowing towards me from up the trail. I had actually been aware of it for a good 30 feet before it truly registered in my thoughts. It was almost familiar in its sweetness, but it had a burnt overtone to it. Before I could think too much about it, I noticed a man walking towards me with a backpack on. He was about 5 feet 6 inches in height and robust for his size. But his clothes seemed rather dirty and unkempt. He had a puffy jacket with tears here and there and a ball cap on as well. His right hand was tucked into his shoulder strap, and he had his gaze directed towards the ground. I put on my best disarming smile and said, "Hello," as I drifted to the side of the trail, trying to not take up too much room so he could pass me easily. The guy just stopped just after passing me and sniffed the air. "You smell funny. Almost like you're going bad." He then lifted his head and looked back at me, cocking his head slightly like a curious animal. I turned to make sure he was addressing me and the first thing I noticed was his eye color. They were a deep red, making the pupil stand out more than any I had ever seen before. His skin tone at first glance was that of an African American, but a closer look showed it was too pale compared to any of the dark-skinned people I had seen before. My confusion must have shown on my face because he chuckled at me. "I just ate a couple of days ago, so under normal circumstances, I would just pass you by and continue my hunt." He then gave a deep sigh, and my nose was flooded with the burnt sugar smell even more. For some reason, the hair on my arms stood up and my skin was suddenly covered in goosebumps. "But you see, your luck is just too terrible. First, you meet me in the woods with no one nearby, and second, you remind me of someone I am still very upset with." His eyes darted to his left arm, and I noticed the sleeve was empty. "You also piqued my interest with your smell. It's something I have never smelled in all my 300 years. I have heard of someone who is supposed to smell extra tasty to one of my kind, but never one who smells on the verge of going bad. Are you perhaps sick? I keyed in on one particular thing he said, 300 years. Your kind. I don't understand. Not that it's important now, but yes, my kind. I am a vampire. All I could think is that this guy was fucking with me. Vampire. Out in the daylight. Are you okay, mister? With his one hand, the guy removed his backpack and let it fall to the side of the trail. Ah, you confuse fiction with reality. Well, in my human life I was a sort of teacher, so let the lesson begin. Lesson number 1. Before I knew it, or could react, the man was standing directly in front of me, and he placed his hand on my sternum, almost gently. Then, with seemingly no effort, he pushed his hand forward and I felt like I had been hit by Tyler's van again. My feet left the ground and I felt like I flew backward for a very long time before my shoulder hit a tree and I spun around a couple of times before falling face-first into the dirt. The impact had me short of breath, but my training with Jasper taught me the importance of regaining your feet as quickly as possible. So, I struggled to my feet and looked in the direction from which I had been tossed. The man just stood there, seemingly unconcerned that I was on my feet. Quick reactions. I think I will enjoy this quite a bit. I know it's bad form to play with your food, but I just love tearing down guys who try so hard to look strong. All the while not knowing that the weakest of us is still 100 times stronger than the strongest of you. He said all this, while slowly walking towards me. This time, I was able to make out when he started running toward me. As his hand reached for my chest again with an open palm, I swung my right hand to shove his arm to my side. But my hand stopped on contact with his arm, and I was again blasted back who knows how many feet. This time around I didn't hit a tree, just started tumbling when I landed on solid ground. However, it took me longer to get up, and I was seeing red. My rage, which was so close to the surface these days, was burning hotter than ever before. The white flame threatened to take over my mind. One of the few clear thoughts still in my head was the advice Sam had given me: if you ever smell a burnt sweet smell, run, and get to the stream that signified the Quileute border. Something told me, though, that if I turned my back on this guy, then it was all over. I brought my hands back up and tried to find the center of my balance. Lesson number 1 was about how weak you are. Lesson number 2 was going to be about how slow you are, but you seem too slow to even think of running. Not that it would do you any good regardless. In a way, I am slightly envious of you. Soon you will see if there is a heaven or hell, something I will never know. While keeping a slow pace, he continued walking towards me with a smile, but then his smile grew frightening in its intensity as he hissed at me, "Class is over."
Another tale fades into the silence. But here, in the fantasy audiobook library, stories never sleep. Subscribe, and return when your heart seeks adventure. We'll be waiting.